Welcome to today's video, and it's going to be a long one. Today we are doing the full Google Ads tutorial video. I've been meaning to get one of these up for a while. I wanted to get it up before, but I'm finally getting it out now. It took a while to get together, and yeah, we're going to cover a lot today, so it's going to be a long one. But if you are new here, my name is Chris. I cover all things Google Ads, local lead generation. If you want to see more stuff like this, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. But before we jump into it, I just wanted to cover a couple of things up front and just kind of show you what is possible with Google Ads, because I know it's very, very easy on the internet to just sort of read a bunch of information, put together a tutorial, put it out there, and then say, here you go, and just not back it up with anything. I wanted to at least back it up with a quick snapshot of results so you can see what can actually be done. So you know this isn't just some information that I read somewhere that I'm just kind of putting online, and that you know this is stuff that is actually working in the market right now. And then on top of that, it's not just me. If you go to other tutorial videos like this that I've done, there's comments on there from other people just pretty much taking what I've done, implementing it, and then having success on their end as well. So this particular client, since we have launched this campaign, we've had over 1,500 leads come through this campaign, and it's been up for a while. You can see some of the numbers here, but again, I show this not to brag, but to show you that what I'm going to talk about in this video today, if you stick with it, if you go through the actual steps, you go through the training, you implement it, this stuff does work. And if you want to see more examples, you want to see more case studies, you can go to my channel. There's a ton of videos up there. There's a ton of case studies up there, and you can go through it and kind of pick and choose what you want to see. So I just wanted to start with that really quick, kind of get that out of the way, let you know that what we're going to be talking about is stuff that actually works, as long as you follow the steps and implement it appropriately. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to hop over to a lovely little presentation. We're going to start there, and then we're going to go step by step, getting everything together. And also down below, there are timestamps on this video. So if you are coming back to the video, or you just kind of want to jump ahead to a certain spot, there are timestamps below in the description. And if you kind of scroll through the bottom of the video, you should see the different sections that should take you to where you want to go. But with all that out of the way, let's just jump right into the tutorial and get this process moving. All right, so welcome to this year's Google Ads tutorial. Probably do another one of these moving forward, but today there's going to be a lot of content in here, so this video is probably going to run on for a while. I'm going to put timestamps down below so you can skip around if you need to kind of jump off and come back, so you can kind of navigate things easily here. But yeah, without wasting any time, let's just kind of jump right in and get things going. So before we get into things, I wanted to cover a few things before we get started, some disclaimers, stuff like that. Like I just mentioned, the timestamps are going to be below in the description. I'm going to go over a few things first before getting into all the campaign build stuff. So if you want to skip around, there's going to be some timestamps down there. You should also see it in the timeline of the video, so you can use those to skip around if you'd like. Also, this video is mainly going to be focused on lead generation for local businesses. That is my area that I kind of specialize in and focus on. So if you're looking for something like e-commerce, some of these things from this video will still apply, but the overall strategy here is to generate leads for local businesses. So in terms of e-commerce, things like keyword research, campaign structure, all that kind of stuff will still be relevant. But like I said, the strategy, all that kind of stuff is focused on lead generation for local businesses. And also the way I structure these kind of tutorial videos is with the most important, and honestly, if I'm being transparent, the most boring stuff first. And the reason I put that stuff up front is because it is the 20% of things that will actually get you 80% of your success with Google Ads. So things like landing pages, setting up conversion tracking, making sure you understand campaign structure, all that kind of stuff needs to be handled first. That's the foundation of your campaign. And if you don't have that stuff set up first and you go straight into keyword research and, creating ads and all this kind of stuff, which seems like the more entertaining, fun stuff, if you don't have things like landing pages set up or conversion tracking set up, you're just not going to have success with your campaign. So the reason I put that stuff up front first is because I believe it is the most important stuff. It's the stuff you should focus on and the stuff you should not skip in this video if you want to get good results with Google Ads. Also with this video, I want to try to keep things as simple as possible and as straightforward as possible. I could probably make a 10-hour video going down the rabbit hole of every tool you can use, more complicated ways of setting up conversion tracking, setting things up with Google Tag Manager and all this sort of stuff. step-by-step tutorials for landing pages, all that kind of stuff. But I understand that everybody's going to be coming in at different skill levels and different understandings and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to keep things as simple as possible and as stripped down as possible without actually sacrificing quality, so that you can actually get things up and running without too much tech headache, without having to learn 7 different software tools and integrating all this stuff. Just gonna keep it basic, gonna keep it as straightforward as possible and kind of strip it down as much as possible without actually sacrificing the quality of the content. And one final thing before we kind of get going here is I'm recording this video in September of 2025, and Google will inevitably change the user interface within the next year, because they always do. And I've already seen it going between different accounts. Just even looking at the conversion tracking setup area of an account, it is totally different from one account to the next. So Google's always switching this stuff. What you see on your end might not exactly look like what I'm seeing on my end. For the most part, the overall account layout is going to be the same, but certain things might switch. And Google is known to do this on almost like a year-by-year basis. So if you're seeing this 4 or 5 months from now, Google could have updated something, they could have switched something, and what you're seeing might not perfectly line up. So you might have to do a little bit of digging on the side to kind of figure out where things are. But that said, all of the concept stuff, all the structure stuff, it's all still going to apply regardless of what Google does with their interface and their layout and all that kind of stuff. So let's go over really quick what we're actually going to cover in this video. So number one, obviously setting up a campaign. We're going to do some landing page overview stuff. I'm not going to do step-by-step tutorials on how to build landing pages, because everybody's going to be on different landing page builders. I will link in the description below some videos going over landing page stuff, which I will talk about in just a little bit. We're going to go over conversion tracking setup in a very kind of simplified way. Again, this is one of those things, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole with it. I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. We're going to go over keyword research, structuring your campaign, writing the ads, and also get into a little bit about how you can use ChatGPT to help you write the ads and kind of come up with some ideas. And then we're going to go over creating campaign assets, launching the campaigns, kind of finalizing it, and so much more. So this is going to be, like I said, a longer video, but there are some things that we will not cover in depth. Like I said, the intention of this video is to kind of simplify things, give you a framework. And in the description below, I'm going to link to what I kind of refer to as support videos that are going to go over some of these other things in more depth, because if I put it all in one video, like I said, we'd be here for friggin' like 10 hours. And I don't want to make a video that long. I don't think my PC wants to export a video that long. So there's some other things that we'll cover in the description below. Go over landing pages, things you want to have on your landing pages, why you want to use landing pages. I will link to a video going over campaign optimization and some things you can do after you actually launch your campaign to keep optimizing it and getting good results from it. Going to go over campaign troubleshooting, so what you want to look for if your campaign just isn't producing leads, the framework you want to approach things with to actually figure out why it's not producing leads and what you can do about it. And then also some links over to tools that you're going to need for Google Ads. I'll talk about that in a second as well. But there's going to be a video down there showing, tools that I've used, tools that I've recommend, and things that I think are absolutely required and things that are just kind of nice to have. So that said, talking about tools, what tools do you need to run Google Ads? So the main thing you're going to need is a landing page builder. That's the bare minimum you're going to need, is a way to build pages to send traffic to. You don't really need to set up call tracking. It's really recommended to set up call tracking, but at the very least, you're going to want to set up a landing page builder, or at the very least, some kind of website builder or something like that. Again, a video going over all this stuff is going to be linked in the description. And there's a page on my website. You can see it right here, downeymarketing.com/tools. If you go there, there's a list of tools between landing page builders, phone call tracking, tools that I use now to help optimize campaigns, all that kind of stuff. On that page, you can see what I recommend, and pretty much everything on that page I'm either using right now or I have paid for and used in the past. So just to save time, I don't want to go too in depth on all that. Really, before we get started, the main thing you want to have is a way to build pages, whether that's going to be on your existing website right now or with a landing page builder. But like I said, if you want to see that list of tools, you can go to that page or check out that video in the description below. Now, obviously, before we actually start building a campaign, if you do not have a Google Ads account set up already, the first thing you're going to want to do before you actually move forward with this video is set up a Google Ads account. I'm not going to cover that in this video because there's probably a million videos out there going over how to actually set one up. And it's a very straightforward process. If you have not set one up, all you're going to want to do is go to ads.google.com. Just click on the Start Now button in the top right, and Google will gladly walk you through the process to get an account set up. The process kind of changes all the time, but they're most likely going to make you set up a smart campaign when you get an account set up. So long story short, they're going to take you through a process where you have to essentially build out a campaign, very, very basic campaign where you have to pretty much just put in your card info, get a campaign built out, and then now you have an account with Google Ads. But what you want to do is you want to go through that process. And then once you do that, just pause the campaign after you've created it, and then come back to this video because you're obviously going to need that account before we actually start building a campaign. And then also after you've done that, one thing you want to verify is that your account is displaying an expert mode. A lot of times when Google sets up these new accounts, Google will usually default the interface to what's called smart mode, and you're not going to see a lot of the features that I'm talking about. So if you did just set up an account, you want to go to the settings on your account and then switch from smart mode to expert mode. So that way you're able to do everything you need to do on your Google Ads campaign. And again, same thing with setting up the account. If you do need some guidance on doing that, there's going to be a ton of videos out there. Google will probably have their own little help article, but make sure that you are in expert mode before actually proceeding forward with the video. So before we keep moving, I thought it would be really important to cover what your budget should be when it comes to running Google Ads, because I think it's really important to understand the reality of Google Ads and where it is right now, because it would kind of suck to go through this entire tutorial, build a campaign, do all that stuff, and then find out that your budget just might not work for Google Ads. So the reality of Google Ads is it's always been a bit more of an expensive platform, and over the past 2 or 3 years, costs have gone up. So if you are somebody that ran Google Ads 5 to 7 years ago and you're getting back into it, there's a very good chance that costs have gone up. And if your budget might be too small for Google Ads right now, I would recommend allocating that budget towards more like something like Facebook ads. For example, if you wanted to run Google Ads for roofing or something like that, and you only had $1,000 a month, I would not recommend doing Google Ads because the cost per click can just be outrageous for that industry. And I would focus that budget on something like Facebook. Now, in order to actually figure out what the cost per click is, your budget, all that kind of stuff, we can use the keyword planner to get a rough idea of what that cost per click is. And usually what I recommend going with is a daily budget that would get you at least 5 clicks per day for high quality, high intent traffic. And the reason I say 5 clicks is at least from the perspective of somebody who works with clients. My goal is to convert 1 in 5 clicks into leads. And that's going to allow me to at least deliver like 1 lead a day on that budget to get that client results. If you're running these ads for yourself, you could potentially budget for a little bit less. Maybe you could trim out a couple of days and allocate that daily budget towards maybe 3 or 4 days of the week. There's a lot of ways around it, but I think it's really important up front to at least look at the cost per click, figure out what your daily budget should be. And really quickly, I'm gonna hop over to the keyword planner, show you what to look for, and show you how I kind of figure out rough budget estimates. All right, so at this point, you should have an account set up. You should see a dashboard that looks something like this. And what you wanna do is you wanna come over here to Tools, go to Planning, and then go to Keyword Planner. If you're not running a campaign currently and you're not spending money on a campaign, the numbers for search traffic might look a little bit different, but we can still use this to get a rough idea of cost per click. So what you're gonna do, click on Discover New Keywords, and you want to put in just the root keywords of whatever your industry is right here. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to be doing tree services, and I'll show you another example on top of that. But like I said, you just want to take the root keywords, put them in here, and then we can start getting those cost per click estimates. So I went ahead, I put in my keywords. I didn't go too wild with this. I just did tree services near me, and then tree services Seattle. We just want to hit get results. And then one other thing I'm going to do is right up here, you see the targeting. I want to click on this and just target whatever area you are roughly going to be showing your ads in. For me, I'm going to be doing Seattle. So I'm just going to select the area that I want. We're going to grab that. And you could go, more wild with this, target other areas around this. For the purposes of this, I'm just going to grab that, hit save. And over here, you're going to see some cost per click estimates. And what Google does here is they show the low range and then the high range for what getting to the top of the page would cost. And for me personally, I usually kind of expect the cost per click to be closer to these high range. Now you want to take these numbers with a grain of salt because these are never ever going to be fully accurate. There's going to be really a lot of variation, and the only way to truly know what the cost per click is going to be is to get a campaign actually up and running. So just really quickly looking at this for me, I would imagine the average cost per click would probably be anywhere from about like $25 to maybe $30 per click in this market. Granted, Seattle is a bit of a bigger market. Everything is very expensive out here, so it's going to be more expensive in your market. It could be very different if you are in the same industry. So for me, I would probably look at this and say the average is probably somewhere around like 25, $30. I would take that number and then multiply it by 5. So in this case, we'd probably be looking at about like $25 times 5. I would say for Seattle, you'd probably want to start somewhere about like $100 to $125 a day as a solid starting budget. And the good thing about Google Ads, or really any kind of online advertising platform, is if that turns out to be too high, you can always bring that down. So you can always adjust that down. You aren't locked into $125 a day. And also, if you can't afford to run that budget, say 5-6 days a week, you could then take that budget and maybe run it 3 or 4 days a week and kind of work around things that way. So what you want to do is you want to kind of take that same approach for your industry and then get a rough idea of what your daily budget should be to really be able to get enough traffic, be competitive in your market, and then kind of take things from there. And like I said, if that number is too high, there are ways to try to work around it, or alternatively, this would be a good time to maybe start thinking about something like Facebook ads, because Google ads just might not be the best platform right now. And also, like I said before, keep in mind these numbers, kind of take them with a grain of salt. You could get a campaign running and it could actually turn out the cost per click could be lower, but there's also a reality where that cost per click could be higher as well. And really quickly, before we jump off to the next step, did another quick search, did dumpster rental, and you can see obviously the cost per click is going to be different based on the industry, based on the market. For me, looking at this market, the average cost per click for something like, you've got dumpster rental near me coming in somewhere like $10.50, dumpster rental Seattle is about like $8.40, dumpster rental about $9. You'd probably be safe estimating anywhere from like $8 to $10 a click in this market. And just based on my experience running dumpster rental campaigns in other markets, that's usually roughly where the cost per click falls. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower. So in this case, I would take probably, just to kind of be safe, maybe $10 per click, multiply it by 5. You'd want to start with at least $50 a day. From my end, just having personal experience running dumpster rental campaigns, it's usually better if you start with something like $75 a day. So it's really kind of dependent upon the industry you're in. And also just if you have any other personal experience running those ads in that industry, you're going to kind of know a good estimate for where you should start. But that is how I actually determine what daily budget should be and how we should kind of allocate our budget before we actually start building a Google Ads campaign. All right, so next we got to cover some more foundational stuff. I know it's kind of boring. I'm sure some people want to just hop right into the campaign and get going, but understanding this stuff is super important when it comes to actually getting the foundation of your campaigns correct and understanding certain concepts that are going to make everything further down the line make a lot more sense and give you more success with your campaigns. Now, there's a couple of important things that I want to cover when it comes to actually going over the Google Ads account campaign structure. Number one, obviously, I want to show you what the structure looks like if you are not familiar with Google Ads accounts. And then number two, and more importantly, I want to go over a concept called relevance that will make more sense when we actually start looking at the little graphic that I made for the campaign structure. Now, if you're brand new to Google Ads, the campaign structure and relevance stuff might not make total sense yet. But as we go through all of this, we start to get our keywords together, start building the campaign, it'll probably start making more sense. And I will probably call back to this multiple times as I go through this. And if it doesn't quite make sense, just come back to this graphic as I'm going through things and it'll probably make a little bit more sense. So this is going to be your general structure of a Google Ads account. At the top here, we have the campaign level. This is where you set the daily budget for your campaign. This is where you set the settings for the campaign, what bid strategy you're going to use. You set a lot of the more macro level things that guide a lot of the stuff underneath it. And then underneath campaign, you have ad groups. Now, all ad groups really are really just a way to organize your keywords, organize your ads, and all of that kind of stuff. Ad groups are really more kind of an organizational tool in a way, more than they are going to impact, say, your bid strategy or anything like that. Think of ad groups kind of like folders on a computer. They're going to allow you to organize everything within your campaign. Within each one of the ad groups, you're going to have your keywords, you're going to have your ads, and there's other things we can get into later with, defining audiences and who you're targeting with age ranges and all that kind of stuff. But at a really basic level, you're going to have your keywords and your ads, and then those ads are going to point towards landing pages. So this is the overall structure of what a campaign looks like. And you want to make sure you have everything organized properly from the jump, because if you don't, you're going to have to backtrack. You might have to rebuild some things. But the next thing I want to talk about really quickly is this idea of relevance. Now, when it comes to Google Ads, one of the most important things is you have to think about things from the perspective of the searcher. And this is going to influence how you structure your campaigns, what keywords go in your ad groups, what you say in your ads, what you say on your landing pages. Because the way you need to structure your campaign is you need to make sure that each of your ad groups has a theme around it. So you're obviously going to have more ad groups than just 3, but for the sake of this example, I split this up into tree trimming, tree removal, and stump grinding. And within each one of these ad groups, you're only going to have keywords, ads, and landing pages that speak directly to that theme. This is where the word relevance comes through. Everything from the point that somebody sees an ad to the landing page they see, the keyword that you bid on, everything needs to be relevant and aligned through that entire funnel. You want to think of each ad group almost like its own little marketing funnel in and of itself, because that is what's going to be most relevant to the searcher. We need to make sure that if somebody searches for tree removal near me, obviously within that ad group, we want to have tree removal keywords. We want the ads in that ad group to speak directly to tree removal and not be really generic or have a bunch of other different keywords in there talking about stump grinding, this and that. The ads need to be specific to tree removal. Then they'd click on a page. Ideally, they should go to a landing page that speaks directly to tree removal. It can be a more general tree services landing page, but for example, you don't want people to click on a tree removal ad and then get sent to a stump grinding landing page. That relevance doesn't work. So everything through all of these ad groups needs to line up and it needs to be relevant to the searcher. Now, here's a couple examples of stuff that you don't want to do. So this is one thing that I see a lot is people set up a campaign. They just have one ad group. They don't even change the name of the ad group. It's just titled Ad Group 1. They take all of their keywords, they put it into one ad group. They have very, very general ads just sort of speaking to whatever, and then they just send it to the homepage of the website. And the problem with this is it's not specific enough. It's not relevant enough. We go back to this, everything in there is relevant at every single step of the process. And if you have all of your keywords between, tree removal, tree trimming, stump grinding, everything in one ad group, the people that search for stump grinding see a general ad that might talk about tree removal, and maybe they'll click on it. They'll probably click on it at a lower rate, but then they'll hit the website homepage that talks about tree removal or tree trimming or whatever. And the whole idea is you just need to give people what they're looking for. We'll talk about that again in a little bit. And this is another quick example of bad relevance. So you could do everything else proper. Getting good traffic in Google Ads is pretty easy. You can have a tree trimming ad group, have your tree trimming keywords, your tree trimming ads. But if you just send those people directly to the homepage of a website where somebody then has to search around to see if you offer the service they're looking for and all this kind of stuff, it's just not as relevant. It's not going to convert as well. Same idea here with tree removal. Everything in the ad group can be right, but if you send them to like the About Us page on the website, you're just not giving them the relevant information based on what they searched, and that is going to impact your performance. Same idea here, stump grinding. You send them to a tree removal page, they're just not going to convert because it's not talking about stump grinding. So when it comes to relevance, one of the easiest ways that I like to think about it is just think from the perspective of the searcher. Think from the perspective of the potential customer. People go to Google to solve a problem, and all you really need to do is put a relevant solution to that problem in front of them. And the easier you make this for them, the better chance you have of actually generating leads from your campaign. You almost need to just handhold people through that process. And going back to this whole idea here is if somebody's looking for tree removal, you just want to show them like, hey, you searched for tree removal. We do tree removal. Here's a page talking about tree removal. Here's our testimonials talking about tree removal. We can help you with that. And you just do it that way. Keep it really simple. Keep it really straightforward. And again, going back to that idea of relevance, keep it really, really relevant, you're going to have a better chance of success. So kind of broke it down here, just like I broke it down on the other page. Someone needs a tree removed. They go to Google looking for somebody to solve the problem. Your ad should speak directly to tree removal, pretty much saying like, hey, you need that. We can solve that problem. They click on the ad. They're taken to a tree removal landing page. And then on that page, generally, you're going to offer something like call us for a free quote. They call you for a free quote, and then they potentially become a customer. So at the end of the day, like I say at the bottom of the page here, is just solve people's problems. And this is one of the biggest concepts that you need to understand with Google Ads before you start building things, before you start, putting together landing pages and keywords and all this kind of stuff. You just need to solve people's problems. And the easier you make it for people to solve their problem and contact you, the more likely you are to generate leads from your campaign. So speaking of landing pages, the next thing that we need to talk about are landing pages. Now in this video, I'm not going to be doing step-by-step landing page builds and all that kind of stuff, because that would take, A, it would take too much time, and B, everybody's going to be building on different platforms, so it's going to look different for everybody. So what I'm going to do is down in the description below, within the different support videos, you can see a couple videos that I've made going over landing pages, things that you want to have on your landing pages. And what I'll do in this video is I'll walk through a really quick example of kind of a mock demo landing page that I put together for this particular campaign that you can kind of pull from and take some inspiration from when you are putting together your own pages. Now, it's really, really important. I went all caps on this. Do not skip landing pages, because getting quality traffic from Google Ads is the easy part of the process, but 80% of your success is going to come from where you send people after they click on an ad. And if you do all the campaign stuff right and you get good traffic and all that sort of stuff, but you're sending them to a page that either isn't designed properly, or you're just sending your traffic to very generic pages on your website, there's a really good chance that, everything else could look good. You can have a great click-through rate and great traffic, but if it's just not converting into leads, the problem is where you're sending that traffic. And one of the best ways to convert traffic into leads is sending them to very focused, well-designed landing pages. And this is really where a lot of the money is made outside of optimization and all that other kind of stuff. But this is where you actually convert a click into a lead. And the more clicks you convert into leads at a higher rate, the more leads you're going to get at a cheaper cost. Because really what it comes down to, it's all in the numbers when you're looking at landing pages versus website and all that. Website homepages, this is going to vary, but typically it's somewhere around 10% is the average. A lot of times what I see is probably lower than that. But when you just factor in, say, 10% of clicks turning into leads, off of 100 clicks, you're going to get 10 leads. If you're getting $10 a click, you're literally going to be getting $100 leads. And for a lot of industries, especially industries where the cost per click is only $10, a $100 lead is probably not going to be profitable. Now, the goal of the landing page is to convert at least 20% or more of your clicks into leads. That conversion rate can obviously vary based on the industry. If it's more of an emergency kind of service, that conversion rate will usually be higher, but 20% on average is a good place to shoot for. And if you take those exact same 100 clicks, now at 20%, you're going to be getting 20 leads out of those 100 clicks. And if it's the same $10 a click, you're now taking $100 leads and turning that into $50 leads. So landing pages are really one of the biggest levers you can pull to improve the performance on your Google Ads campaigns. You can tweak all the settings you want. You can get all the keywords and test all this different stuff within your Google Ads account. But at the end of the day, usually one of the biggest things that'll make or break a campaign is where you are sending your traffic. So in a second, I'll show you that demo landing page that I put together. But let's go over what a landing page is really quick. Now, technically, by definition, a landing page is just the page that the traffic lands on after they click on an ad. But in this case, though, what I'm talking about when I'm saying landing pages is a very focused, very simple page designed specifically to convert people into leads, and not just any page on a website or a service page or the home page or anything like that. We want to send people to pages that have no navigation, no distractions, no ability to click off the page. They have to be mobile optimized. They got to be designed to generate leads. They can't be loading really slow. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but ultimately they need to be very simple, very focused, and designed to push people towards a call to action, where really the whole goal is either people convert into leads or they go back to Google. And that sounds very restrictive, but that is how we get the best conversion rates out of a page. And if at the end of the day, you are paying for every single one of those clicks from Google, you want to convert as many as possible into leads, because if you're not converting those clicks into leads, you're just going to be spending money on traffic and just not getting any leads out of it. So with that said, let's hop over to the demo page and I'll walk you through really quickly some different things you want to have on your landing page. All right, so we're over on that page right now, and keep in mind, this is not meant to be some kind of design masterclass or anything like that. I am not a designer, but usually what I've found with landing pages is you don't need to be some master designer. It just needs to be simple and easy to use and load fast, and really just needs to give people what they need in a way that is clear and concise and easy for them to just get in contact with you. So what I'll do with this is just kind of go top to bottom and just sort of explain some of the key elements here. So starting up at the top, the first thing you're going to notice, there is no navigation on this page. And this is what you want to have on your landing pages. You don't want to give people the option to start clicking around your website, going to the About Us page, looking at all the services, or, even clicking off and going to social media pages and all that kind of stuff. You want them to stay on this page, and you only want to give them really just two options. It's either they become a lead by calling the phone number or filling out a form, or they go back to Google. That's all you want them to do. If you give them all these different options and all these different pages they can go to, the chances of them actually doing the thing you want them to do becomes a lot lower, because you've now given them a ton of different options for them to choose from, and you want to avoid that. So you want to do that. Another thing I really like to do on my landing pages is I try to this is called sticky header right here. It's probably a lot of other names for it, but I like to stick the header to the top of the page and then always have just a call to action with a tap to call button there. Most importantly, if I switch it over to mobile, you're going to see that right there. This needs a little work. I think it's a little bit big, but if somebody's on a mobile device, they're just kind of a tap to call number right there at the top that they can hit and then give a call to the business very, very easily. So that's the header section. And then up here for the kind of hero section, I keep a lot of these very simple. Usually the headline of the page, you want to call out to whatever is relevant to the searcher. So again, going back to relevance, you want to make sure what is on this page immediately calls out to why they are there. So if they searched for tree services, if they searched for tree removal, if they searched for stump grinding or whatever the service might be, you want to call that out in the headline of the page. You can test out a bunch of different stuff, but you don't want to put a headline that is just really generic. I see a lot of websites where it's kind of more of a slogan than it is, what you do. And sometimes with Google Ads, the simpler you keep it, the better. Could literally just be something like this: top rated tree services in Seattle, or whatever your location is, top rated services in location. You can tweak it, change it, but you just need to call out to what they were searching for. On this particular layout, I have a few little benefit points right underneath it. There's a lot of different ways you could do this. You could just do a little sub headline below that. I'm just doing it this way because it's kind of very landing page 101. And then another thing, we'll touch on this a little bit more in a second when we talk about reviews. Another thing that's really important, especially if you're in an industry that requires a lot of certifications and all that sort of stuff, having these little badges here can be helpful if you are a certified organization. It really helps to build trust with the potential customer because they see that you're legit, you're certified. BBB, if we're being real, is really kind of more of a paid thing, so it doesn't really mean anything. But sometimes to consumers, if they see A+ rating with the BBB, it means something to them. So if you have any of that kind of stuff, I call these trust badges. If you can incorporate some of that stuff, even if it's something like Angie's List top rated type stuff, putting those badges on the page can help. You can put them here, you can put them here, you can put them around the review section, all that kind of stuff. And then I usually have some kind of quote request form. Sometimes what I will do is make this kind of like a button. So it'll be like a pop-up on the page. But again, this is a very, very basic landing page. Have the quote request button there. And then one of the biggest things is if we switch it to mobile, the first thing you're going to notice is it's just really, really easy to interact with. You want it to be mobile responsive. You want it to load quickly. And one thing that's really important is you want to make sure all this important information is up at the top of the page. So you have your calls to action, you have the headline saying why they're there, kind of reasons why they should go with you. And then it gets right into the call to action, because some people, they just want to call somebody. They just want to talk to somebody. The easier you make it for them to do that, the more likely they are to actually pick up the phone and call. So you want to make that top of the page area very, very simple and very focused. and then kind of cover all those points. Everything else on the page is usually pretty basic. So you'll want to have an about section, talk about your business. One piece of advice that I can give with this is it really helps if you inject some personality into it. Don't make it sound too generic. I really like having a picture of either the owner or, the owner with the trucks or the owner with the team and the trucks. Stuff like that helps a ton, because if you almost frame the about section as kind of like a message from the owner, it makes it seem a lot more relatable, a lot more personal. And one of the biggest things with any kind of business transaction is, you've probably heard this cliche, know, like, and trust. It kind of helps to build that up and make you seem a little bit more relatable compared to a lot of other local businesses that might just sort of talk about, kind of more of the generic stuff where, we started this year and we do these services and all that kind of stuff. If you make it more personal, you're going to stand out a little bit more, build that know, like, and trust. And then also when it comes to the images, do not use stock images. Don't do what I'm doing here. These are all just free stock images. You want to have legit images of your business, of your crews, whatever your service is. You want to make it look legit and make it look like you are a real local business. If you just put stock images on there, that's going to lower people's trust. And the lower that trust is, the less likely they are to convert. So you want to make sure those images are real and authentic. And they don't need to be these perfectly professionally shot photos. It could literally just be photos taken on a phone, because if anything, that is really what people resonate with nowadays with social media and everything like that. A lot of the media we consume is just shot on phones. So you don't have to do super big professional productions for everything. Make it look legit, make it look like you are a real business. And especially today with everything being AI and AI slop, the more personalized you make all of this, the better. Another thing that is honestly a non-negotiable on a page is you want to have reviews on the page. This kind of goes hand in hand with the trust badge stuff up here, but you need to have reviews on your page. Usually what I do is I will go to the client's Google business listing and just take screenshots of the reviews and then put those screenshots on the page. I tend to avoid doing things where you embed certain things onto the page, so like pull live streams of reviews, because that can tend to slow the page down. But if you just put screenshots of reviews, that works pretty well. And the reason why I like using screenshots is because if I take a direct screenshot of a review, whether it's Google, Yelp, whatever, it is really, really hard to fake that. Whereas if you just take sort of like a templated review section on a website builder or a landing page builder or something like that, it is really easy to just fake a review. Like I can just go to ChatGPT and have it come up with 10 different fake reviews, and I can just copy and paste it into the review section on my landing page builder or something like that. But if you just take the actual screenshots from the Google business listing, you can't really fake that, and I think it looks a little bit more legit. You want to sprinkle in calls to actions throughout the page, and then the other sections on the landing page is really going to be dependent upon what your business is, your service is, and what is sort of expected and what kind of information the customer needs. So that's really, at the end of the day, it's about what the customer needs and what they're looking for and how you can build trust throughout that page. And your landing pages don't need to be these massive, massive things. Sometimes they can be simple. Like this one is literally just the header, about section, some photos, reviews, call to action, services, and then a footer call to action. This would probably be fine to run. One other thing you might want to test out is maybe just have like, here's the areas we service, maybe a Google Maps screenshot of your business listing on there, where it's located, all that kind of stuff. That might be a little bit more relevant for if you have a physical location, like a shop that people come to. That would be more relevant in that case. In this case, I just have some services here. Obviously, adjust this based upon what is relevant to you. And then at the bottom, we just have another call to action right here that people can use to actually, call you or request pricing. I think this just kind of scrolls back up the page. So that is what you want to have with your landing pages. Again, no navigation, keep it really simple, get rid of all of the distractions, and you just want to solve people's problems. Give them the information that they need to make a decision, make yourself look like a legit business, and then just make it easy for people to reach out for a quote. And that is pretty much it for that landing page. Let's hop back over to there. I'll go over how to actually get these together really quick, and then we will move on to the next step from there. And there's one last thing that I almost forgot, so we're editing this back in at the end, is we need to have a thank you page set up. So you're gonna need your main landing page or landing pages. You can have multiple landing pages if you want, but you need to have at least one thank you page, which is essentially a page that somebody gets redirected to after they fill out a form. And if you don't have this page set up for your campaign, you're not going to be able to fire a conversion event in Google Ads. You're essentially not going to have a place to install your conversion tracking for those form fill conversion actions. And we'll go over the conversion tracking setup later on. But let's go over to that thank you page. I'll show you what it looks like, and I'll run through really quickly kind of how you get it set up conceptually, and then we'll kind of continue on from there. All right, so this is a very standard looking kind of thank you page. So really a thank you page, you could literally just have the page say thank you and that's it. Typically what I do is after somebody hits a landing page, what's gonna happen is somebody's gonna hit this page, they're gonna fill out this form, and then they're gonna click get my free quote. And what's gonna happen on a lot of landing page builders is they're gonna be able to get redirected to whatever page you want after they submit this form. On my landing page builder, I can just set the redirect as a thank you page. So you can just, make the URL whatever you want. I usually just do whatever the domain name is /thanks. And then after they fill out this form, they click get my free quote, they get redirected to this page. And then a little later on, we're going to set up a conversion tag on this page that's going to fire and then send that information back to Google Ads that will let Google know that a conversion event happened. And this is pretty much how we, this is how we track those form fill conversions. And usually what I like to do on these pages is, it's thanks for reaching out to us. You can have a little blurb here. And then I always put the phone number on this page as well, just saying like, hey, if you prefer to speak to somebody sooner, just give us a call, the phone number below. Not everybody's going to call this phone number, but I find, it's going to vary based on industry and all that kind of stuff. But usually maybe like 1 in 10 people who submit a form will actually just call the phone number on this page. And that's just another way to try to get a few more inbound phone calls here and there, as opposed to just trying to follow up with form fills. So make sure that obviously number one, you have your landing page set up, and then also get your thank you page set up, and then make sure that your form is redirecting people to the thank you page after they click submit on that form. And then we can keep going from there. And in a little bit, we'll come back to these pages and we will get our conversion tracking set up. So when it comes to putting together landing pages, there's a handful of tools that I recommend. And again, down in the description below will be a link over to the tools page on my website. I will probably also link to that tools video as well in the description below too. You can go to downeymarketing.com/tools. It will walk through some of the things that I recommend. But typically, there's a couple different ways that you can put together these landing pages. You can pay for a landing page builder, things like Go High Level, Instapage, Landingy, Lead Pages, Unbounce, or you can use website builders. There are free options, things like Wix and Squarespace. I am not personally super experienced with those, but in my limited experience with them, I feel like a lot of times some of the features are kind of limited in those. You can't really do all the things that I would personally like to do. With a lot of these landing page builders, they are purpose built for this. And there's going to be varying ranges in terms of pricing. I go over that in the tools video. And really it's about just kind of choosing what's right for you. Now, alternatively, if you don't want to use a landing page software, you can use a website builder. So one that I'm not super experienced, but one that I mess around with is called Duda. But one that I am much more experienced with is WordPress. This one's a little bit more technical, a little bit more kind of a pain if you're not really used to it. I used to build websites, so it's super easy for me, but WordPress is usually one of the most cost-effective ways to get landing pages together. So like I said, if you want more information on all this, just check out that tools video below. But at the end of the day, one thing to keep in mind is they all work. There is no one best landing page builder. There is no one landing page builder that's going to magically get you better conversions. Just pick the one that fits your budget or your skill level and then go from there. All right, so now it is time to actually go over to the Google Ads account and begin to set up our campaign. We're going to go through the initial setup process and then start setting up our settings and all that kind of stuff. So let's hop over to the Google Ads account and get that process going. All right, so we are over at our account. And if you go to ads.google.com, you should get taken to like an overview page. What you want to do is you just want to come over here to campaigns, go underneath campaigns, click on campaigns right here. And to actually create a campaign, you can either click this button right here that just says create campaign, or you're going to click this button, this little blue plus sign says create campaign. Click that, hit new campaign, and we can get started. So usually whenever I'm creating a campaign, I usually start with create a campaign without guidance. This whole section right here, this doesn't really impact things mostly. This is just kind of telling Google what the objective is that you have for the campaign, and they'll suggest certain things throughout the process. But usually I just go create a campaign without guidance, and we'll set everything up as we go. And one thing to keep in mind with this setup process is that you don't need to get all this perfect. Really what we want to do is we just want to get a shell of a campaign into the Google Ads account. And then we're going to go back after we get that shell in there and then get all the settings set up properly and do all that kind of stuff. So don't worry about getting this perfect. We just need to get the campaign in there and then we can kind of go from there. So what I'm going to do, select this. It's going to take us to our next step here. And then we want to, for this particular campaign, we just want to do a search campaign. Don't worry about any of this other stuff. Definitely, if you're doing local lead gen, I would stay away from Performance Max. Performance Max is better for things like e-commerce and that kind of stuff. But for local lead gen, what we want to focus on is search. So we're going to select a search campaign. And then the next thing you're going to see here is conversion goals. So this is something we're going to set up in a little while. You can just leave this as is for now. We're going to create custom conversion goals. Once we get the campaign in there, then we can come back and actually assign those conversion goals to the campaign. So don't worry about this, just hit continue. And then it's going to ask what you want to focus on, website visits, phone calls. Again, I'm just going to skip that and hit continue. We can set up all that kind of stuff later. And then you can just name your campaign. Usually I just keep it relevant to whatever the focus of the campaign is. So in this case, it's going to be a tree service campaign. So I'm just going to call it tree services. For you, obviously name it whatever is relevant for you. All right, so we got the name in there. We're going to hit continue and I'm just going to start new. There's some old tutorial campaigns that I've got in there. So now is where we kind of get the shell of the campaign set up. And like I said, don't worry about getting this perfect. We're going to come back once it's in there and then tweak all the settings and really get it set up properly. So when it comes to the bid strategy, I always start a campaign on a clicks-based bid strategy. The reason why we do this is, a lot of times Google might suggest, hey, go for a conversion-based bid strategy right off the bat. But what we need to do, and I'll cover in the next section going over conversions and how Google Ads works and all that sort of stuff, we need to feed Google Ads conversion data before we actually tell it to go after conversions. So what I do whenever I'm starting a campaign is I will start with just telling Google, go get me as many clicks, as much traffic as I possibly can get to my campaign. I log the leads, the phone calls, the form fills, all that kind of stuff. You log that as conversions. And then once you have enough of that conversion data, then you can switch to a conversion-based bidding strategy, either maximize conversions or target CPA. But to start, we just want to do clicks. And then what you want to do, very, very important, is set a maximum cost per click bid limit. This is going to be something that you're going to want to figure out with that Google Keyword Planner really quick. If you did take a second to figure out what your budget should be, you probably already have a rough idea of what that cost per click is. But usually what I do is I will set it somewhere, kind of an average of that upper end based upon whatever the cost per click for that traffic would be. And one thing to keep in mind as well with this is don't set it too low, because if you set it too low, you're just not going to get any traffic. You're not going to be competitive in your local market. So set it to something reasonable. And again, you can come back and you can edit this. If it's too low, you can bump it up. If it's too high, you can bring it down. So set it to whatever's relevant for you. For the sake of this demo, I'm just going to set it at 1. Obviously, that is not going to work in the real world, but set that for whatever is relevant to your particular industry. And then customer acquisition, you can just skip this. Don't worry about bidding for new customers only. Just hit next. And then these next two things right here on our networks is super, super important. You want to uncheck both of these things. So search partners network. If you go into the settings, which you'll see in a little bit, you'll probably see it when I walk through it, it's going to look like you're unchecking search network, like you're just not going to be showing your ads. You're unchecking search partners network. The reason why you want to uncheck that is Google will take your ads and show them across a bunch of other websites. They call them their search partner websites. And at the end of the day, you have no idea where they're showing them. You have no idea what kind of traffic they're getting. Some industries will get more traffic from it than others, but what I have noticed in the past couple of years And what a lot of people have noticed is the traffic from search partners has tanked in terms of like the traffic quality. That quality has tanked over the past couple of years. You just get a bunch of people calling for jobs, really, really low quality leads, just not at all what you're looking for. So uncheck search partners. And on top of that, uncheck Google Display Network. You can make Google Display Network ads work, but it has to be very, very specific. You can create a campaign specifically for Display Network. And usually Display Network is a lot better for things like retargeting and all that sort of stuff, which we're not going to be focusing on with this. And Display Network has the same kind of issues as search partners, where it'll just show your ads on a bunch of different websites. The traffic is really, really low quality. A lot of times your ads are going to be showing up in mobile apps and all that. It's not worth it. You're not going to get leads from it. So just uncheck both of these things and continue on. Now, when it comes to locations, again, we're going to come back to this and set it up properly once we get the shell of the campaign in there, because there's a little bit more that goes into this with, what we target and exclusions and all that kind of stuff. But what we can do for right now is go under location options, hit presence people in or regularly in your included locations. We only want to show our ads to people who are actually living in the area that we are trying to target. In some cases, presence or interest can be relevant. It's just really dependent upon the type of business that you have. But for the most part, you're talking about like a home service business, you only want to show to people who are in or regularly in your included locations. Because if you go with this first one, which Google's recommending, which we'll touch on that later on in the video, if Google's recommending it, generally you don't want to do it. But if you are, say, a tree service company like this example, and you have somebody in another state searching for something relatively in your location, you don't want to show your ads to that person that's out of state. You only want to show your ads to people who are in the location you're at. So you want to make sure you have that option selected right there. And then for the time being for this, I'm just going to hit enter another location. And for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to target like a root area right now. And again, we're going to come back and edit this. So I put in Seattle, I'm just going to hit include, and then we're just going to keep going. So again, we'll come back to that and edit this. Going on, languages, I don't really worry about this. It says English. If it's relevant to you and you advertise specifically to maybe the Spanish speaking audience, you can put Spanish in there. But for the most part, a lot of people are just gonna be doing English, especially if you're just advertising in the United States. Go with English, you're all good there. EU political ads, this is obvious. If you do that, obviously check yes. If you don't, check no. For a lot of businesses, this is just gonna be a no. Audience segments, don't worry about this. You can get into this and set up audience segments, and it's kind of more of an optimization thing further down the line. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm not going to worry about this. In a lot of cases, you don't really need to worry about it. So we're just going to leave that as is. Next thing we want to do, go here to more settings, ad rotation. You can leave this as optimize, prefer best performing ads. You can tweak this to where it just kind of shows everything evenly. But for a lot of people, you just kind of leave it as is, optimize for the best performing ads. And you should be good there. Ad schedule, the biggest thing I can recommend with the ad schedule is to set it for the hours that A, your business operates, and B, when somebody is most able to get to a phone call. You could set it for, all day and all that kind of stuff, but you need to make sure that somebody's actually able to get to those leads. Like if you have, some kind of call center or something like that, or somebody who is just dedicated to following up with calls and form fills and all that, at all hours of the day. So ultimately, what I'd recommend is keep it to your business hours. And also from what I've seen across a lot of different industries, the times that convert the best are just around normal business hours. If you start showing your ads, at 10 o'clock at night, usually they just don't convert very well. Again, it's going to be dependent upon your industry. But for a lot of local businesses, it's going to be the hours of like 6 to 7 a.m. to maybe 7 p.m. is kind of where you're going to get conversions. And for the most part, what I see, it's usually like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. is just sort of the sweet spot there. Because you got to factor in when people are commuting, conversion rates are probably going to be lower. When people are commuting home at the end of the day and having dinner, conversion rates are probably going to be lower. So it's really, really important. Just keep it to whatever your business hours are and then kind of go from there. So I'm going to set this up really quick as a very simple kind of Monday to Friday schedule. And it's very, very simple to set up. You just go here, you have a lot of different options, and you pretty much just select whatever days you want and then input the times here. For the sake of this, I'm just going to do Monday to Friday, and we'll just do it from, let's say 7 a.m. to We'll go 7 to 7. Why not? And this is also in military time. So you got to do a little bit of calculation there. So 7 to 7 should be 7 to 19, I believe. I hope I got that right. But so whatever your ad schedule is, set it here, and then you can move on under more settings. Everything else should be good here. So yeah, don't worry about any of this other stuff. We can hit next. And this is one of the new things that Google's been beta testing. It's called AI Max. Don't worry about this. Just, you don't need to set all this up. A lot of times, recently Google's been pushing a lot of AI features, just like every big tech company is doing nowadays. From what I've seen from a lot of other people testing it, it doesn't really seem to do that much. And it's, in my opinion, at least right now, better to try to control some of what Google's doing and not just sort of let them show your ads wherever and tweak ads and change. We want to take some control out of Google's hands. Certain things we can put in their hands, but some things right now, just don't worry about it. So you can just kind of skip this step. If you want to test it out, go for it. Right now, this is not something that I'm messing with. So I'm just going to hit next. Same kind of idea here, keyword and asset generation. I skip this step. I'm going to go over a little bit later on how you can actually use something like ChatGPT to help you come up with ads. And for right now, again, with all the AI stuff within Google, in my opinion, like, it's probably better to just sort of learn how to do this stuff manually, because for all we know, Google could change this stuff. We don't know how long they're going to keep it in. And it's better to just understand the fundamentals instead of just relying on Google to do it all for you, because for all I know, 1 year from now, they could scale some of this stuff back and it's just sort of going to be the same. Or it could go the other way. So right now, like I said, I wouldn't worry about it. And Google kind of explains what it does right here is you put a URL in here and it's going to help create things like keywords and headlines, descriptions, all that sort of stuff. It can be useful, but again, I'm going to show you how to leverage something like ChatGPT to come up with ad copy and headlines and all that kind of stuff later. So we're just going to skip that for now. All right, so next it is going to kind of make us put together an ad group really quick. I tried going through this process, and sometimes you can go through the process without putting all this in, and it lets you put together the framework of the campaign, but we're just going to put in like a sort of dummy ad group and then pause it just so we can get the campaign up and running. So what you're going to want to do is, this is where you put in your keywords for the ad group. I'm just going to put in a very basic keyword. I'm just going to put in tree services right there. You can just put in one. Again, like I said, this isn't going to be perfect. We just want to get this up and running. And then what I'm going to do really quick, I'm not going to do this while I'm recording, is I'm going to put together some kind of dummy headlines and descriptions. You're really just going to need a final URL, so where the traffic is actually going, 3 headlines and 2 descriptions. And then from there, we should be good to actually get this campaign up and running. And then we can, again, come back and change this sort of stuff. All right, so what I did is I just kind of put in my website domain. Obviously, if you have your landing pages together, this is where you put your landing page. Put in a few dummy headlines, couple dummy descriptions, and then we will see if this allows us to actually get this campaign published. All right, so that looks good there. Hit next. We got our budget. So budget, this is where, again, if you put together your budget before you did a little bit of research, this is where you put in that daily budget. Really what you want to do is you just want to select custom budget here and then put in whatever your target daily budget is. And you can adjust this up and down as you go. You're not locked into this. So whatever you found, if you did do that keyword research before to kind of see your rough budget, this is where you put in that daily budget. For the sake of this demo, I'm just putting in $1. So obviously on your end, don't put in $1. You're not going to get any traffic. But put in whatever your daily budget is and hit next. And then if you have 2-factor authentication set up like this, it is going to make me confirm it. So I'm going to do that really quick. And then once you do that, Google is going to check for errors up here, kind of scan through the campaign, and it might take a little bit. So give it some time. And if it does take too long to load, you can try refreshing the page. What I have found to work well, especially after the 2-factor authentication thing, is I believe if I just go back, click here onto budget, and then go back to review, sometimes that can work, but it might take a little bit. So I'm just going to let this kind of do its thing. And then once it's done checking for errors, we can actually get the campaign published, and then we can go through getting all the settings set up properly. All right, so it finally went ahead and processed. Sometimes that process can be a little bit annoying. I think for me, the reason why it does that is because I have the 2-factor authentication set up, so Google gets kind of confused. So that may or may not happen to you. So what I had to do to kind of fix that is I refreshed the page once. I had to re-enter the ad information. That seemed to have fixed it. It just took a little bit of time, had to let it process and kind of do its thing. Sometimes I've found switching between some of these options here on the left and then going back to review sometimes helps. But what you want to get to is you want to get to a point where it says your campaign is almost ready to publish. Pretty much everything on this page, don't worry about it. You can see all these errors, don't worry about those. You got the publish campaign button right here. We're just going to click publish campaign, and then we're going to pretty much pause it right when we publish it, just so we can actually make sure we're not spending money on a campaign that is not fully set up. So this is going to load. And then once it loads, what we want to do is we want to come back over here to campaigns, go into campaigns, and then you should see your campaign right here with a little green dot next to it. If you are not seeing that, you can go up here, go under campaigns, and just kind of make sure right here you have campaign selected, campaign status selected as enabled, but you should see the campaign right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this so it doesn't actually start running. And then in the next step, we are going to go into the settings of the campaign, get all that set up properly, get our location set up properly, and then we'll keep going from there. All right, so to actually get into the settings, one thing we're going to want to do before we actually get into the settings is we want to make sure that we have filters set up so this campaign doesn't just like disappear. We want to come up here to campaigns and then go to campaign status where it says enabled, and then just select all. So that way the campaign will actually show up here. So if you ever back out and come back in, you might just see no campaign in there. And the reason being is there could be a filter set up here to just have only enabled campaigns. There could be a filter up here to have only enabled campaigns show, but we want to make sure all of them are showing so that way your campaign actually shows up here. And then what we can do to get to the settings is if you don't have it selected, so if we were to back out, for example, and you just see nothing here or whatever, you set up your filter, you can find your campaign here. In this case, I have a bunch of different kind of demo campaigns. You can see your campaign right here. You got your tree services campaign. You can either select it from here or come up here. You can select it from this drop-down menu. I'm just going to select it here. And now we are inside of our tree services campaign. In order to get to the settings, you just select the campaign. If you're under the campaigns window or tab right here, come over to settings. And now you have a window here where you can actually edit all the settings on your campaign and go back and change any of the stuff that we might need to change. All right, so when it comes to actually getting the settings put together on the account, there's a few things that we have to actually go through here and set up properly. So everything here should be good. Just double check, make sure you have search partners unchecked, make sure you have display network unchecked. And then we are going to come back to the conversion goals in a little bit. So we'll be back to this in a second. Maximize clicks, I would just also double check you have a maximum CPC bid limit. And then the first thing that we're going to go into is the locations. This is one thing we kind of skipped over in the setup process. And really quickly, I'm going to walk you through how you want to set up locations and set up all your targeting. So in order to edit this, you just want to hit this little down arrow. And like I mentioned in the setup, you want to make sure it should be relevant to you if you have a local service business. You want to make sure presence is set to people in or regularly in your included locations. If that's good, we can start messing with our location targeting. Make sure you have enter in another location selected here. Go to advanced search. And this is where we can start to really drill down and get our location targeting set up properly. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do this. You could literally type in a location. So you can target by things as wide as an entire country, an entire state, or you can go down to zip codes and cities. So it really depends upon what your goals are. Usually if I'm doing a local campaign, I will target things by zip code based around the rough area that we want to target the ads. Alternatively, you can just do a radius. So you can enter in a place right here to put a radius around, or you could literally take a pin and say, I want to do 20 miles around Redmond. You can do a 20-mile radius around Redmond. Typically, that's not how I do my location targeting. Like I said, I really prefer to just get the zip codes that I want to target, enter them here, and then do it more specifically that way. And one thing you can do to actually make this easier is you can see up here, there's this little show all areas thing right here. You can click this, it'll zoom in, and you can select different areas on the map to target or exclude. And what we can do is there's a little drop down arrow next to it, and you can start to kind of drill down to what you want to see. In this case, I'm just going to do postal code, but you can show by city, by neighborhood, county, etc., etc. If you leave it on the default show all areas, it's just going to look like a mess. But if you go show by postal code, it will actually show you individual postal codes you can target. And then literally what you do is you just click on it, hit include, and you can just kind of go down the list here and include like this, and it's very, very easy. There are some instances where it can be a little bit funky and maybe not work super well. In that case, what you can do is just look up a zip code list and then maybe type it in manually. For the most part, it seems to work pretty fine. And then what you want to do is you want to go through the area, target the areas that you want to target, and then you should be good from there. But then also what we want to do on top of that is we don't just want to include the areas that we want to target. We want to exclude pretty much everything else, because one of the issues with Google Ads is there's a lot of people using Google on mobile devices, and sometimes what can happen is somebody could live, up here, but work in Seattle. And when they're back at home at the end of the night, maybe their phone still thinks they're in Seattle, and, Google gets confused and shows the ad way out here when you don't want it to do that. So what we want to do to kind of take those extra precautions is we want to exclude as many areas outside of our targeting location as possible. So to start that process, usually what I do is I will literally exclude every other state. I'll exclude Canada, Mexico, etc. Start by excluding all of the other states that you don't want your ads showing up for, and it's exactly the same as targeting a location. You just want to go in here, and let's say I wanted to exclude Oregon. You just go like that, and then you hit exclude, and then you just want to do this for every single state. So I'm obviously not going to do that right now because that would take forever, but you want to go through and exclude all of the other states, exclude Canada, Mexico. You might not have to exclude Canada, Mexico, but I just do that as an added kind of layer to things. And I will show you a completed example of this in just a minute. But what you want to do also, you don't have to do this step, but it's something that I do as well, is I like to exclude all of the other counties in the state that I'm advertising in to try to prevent my ads showing up outside the targeting location as well. A couple different ways you can do this. Number one, obviously you can just look at a county list and then just type the county names in and exclude them that way. Alternatively, we can do the same thing that we did before, hit this little down arrow and then say show by county. And then if we zoom out, you should see the different counties that you can just click on, exclude like that, and it makes it pretty easy. And again, same thing, if it's not showing up or something's messing up, just go to a list and then just grab the county that you want to exclude. And then you can go like that. So that is how you want to kind of put all that together. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump over to a completed example and just show you what it looks like and how things should probably look for your location targeting before you launch your campaign. All right, so this is an example of an active campaign where I have set all this kind of targeting up. So you can see right here, I've selected all of these different zip codes in the Sacramento area to target. I've also layered in another little radius targeting right there, because sometimes what can happen with the zip code targeting is it's not going to be perfect in every situation. Like if I wanted to target just this area and I wanted to try to do a zip code, I'm pretty sure this entire untargeted area is the zip code, which just kind of didn't really fit. So I layered in a little radius targeting right there, but everything else is zip code. And then you can see this in some cases might be kind of overkill, but for me personally, I'd prefer to take those extra precautions up front to try to filter out as much crap as I can. You can see I literally brought zip codes all the way up to where we're targeting, so it's kind of as clean as possible. And then if we zoom out further, I got all the counties excluded, and then I have all the states and Canada and Mexico excluded as well. So this is a tedious process, and like I said, I'm not going to do it on video because we'd be sitting here for about 30 minutes watching me do this. So on your end, you want to go ahead and do this now, get your location targeting set up. Then obviously you hit save, and then once you hit save, again, verify that you have presence, people enter regularly in your included locations, and then you hit save, and then your location targeting, it should be good to go. So after that, you can hit save, and then everything else in your settings should already be set up outside of the conversion tracking stuff, but just double check based on that initial setup that we did that everything's good. In this case, everything looks fine on my end, so don't worry about anything else here. Just make sure your location targeting is set up properly. And what we're going to do next is we're actually going to go through setting up the conversion tracking, and then we're going to come back in here and we're actually going to create a custom conversion goal and then attach that conversion goal to this campaign. All right, so the next thing we got to talk about is conversion tracking. So this is a very, very, very important step. Just like everything else I've covered, don't skip any of this kind of stuff. You need to have a conversion tracking set up because on the one hand, if you don't have conversion tracking set up, you're not going to know what is working and what's not working in your campaign. So you're not going to be able to optimize your campaign after you launch it. You're not going to know what keywords are working. You're not going to know what ads are working. You got to have conversion tracking set up. And then on top of that, this really plays into how Google works nowadays. There's a lot of algorithms and AI and everything behind the scenes that takes this conversion data and then they learn on their end. So what we need to do on our end is we need to tag whatever actions are important to us as a conversion. So for a local lead gen campaign, we want to track phone calls, form fills. If you have some kind of online booking system that you want to use, you need to track bookings. If you're in e-commerce or you're selling some kind of product online, you need to tag actual purchases as conversions. So you don't want to just be tracking, individual clicks or button clicks or anything like that. We want to track the actual action that somebody takes, because that is the ultimate goal that we want. So what we do is we track those actions, we feed that data into Google, and what Google does is it goes and looks for more people that can take those actions for us. So we're just telling Google, hey, these things are important to us. And by doing that and tracking that, we're essentially telling Google, hey, go get more of this for us. So Google on their end is going to be doing a lot of learning in the background, like I said, with all their algorithms and AI and all this kind of stuff, that is going to figure out who is most likely to convert, and they're going to show the ads to those people who are more likely to convert. And then kind of alternatively, if we are feeding Google conversion actions that are irrelevant, so like button clicks, people just visiting pages, that kind of stuff, we're feeding Google inaccurate data that doesn't align with the actions we want people to take. And that over the long term can hurt the performance of your campaign, because Google is just not going to know really what you're looking for. And if you're telling Google, hey, I just want people who visit a page or click a button, you're just going to get more of those people. So you want to set things up so that you are actually tracking the conversions that are important to you, and then Google is going to give you more of that. So let's jump back over to the campaign and we'll go through a very simplified setup for conversion tracking. All right, so to get to the actual section of your account where you can create conversion actions, you want to go over here to go to goals. Under conversions, go to summary, and you're going to see a page that probably looks something like this on your end. If there's conversion actions in here already, you'll probably see something different. But what we want to do is we want to start creating conversion actions. But before I do that, I just kind of want to clear a couple things up. Earlier on in the video, I mentioned that I'm going to try to keep things as simple as possible. And there's a lot of different ways to set up conversion actions. And ideally, you want to set up enhanced conversions and kind of do all this other stuff in Google Tag Manager. It's a lot more complicated, and I figured for the sake of this video, I'm going to keep it as simple as possible, because if I start going into setting up Google Tag Manager, setting up enhanced conversions, all of that is probably just going to be way too much. So there's going to be other tutorials if you do want to get all that set up. Probably on other channels, I might put one up at some point, but the purpose of this, it's going to be as simple as possible. We're just going to create some conversion actions. We're going to take some codes, paste it onto our landing pages, and then just kind of go from there. So again, going to keep this as simple as possible. And if you want that more technical stuff, there are plenty of other tutorials out there for that. What we're going to do is we are first going to come down here to create conversion action. We're going to hit that. And this whole process, Google's changed this over like maybe twice in the past year. So depending on how new your account is, depending on how old your account is, will determine what you're going to see here. But I think the first one that I want to set up is the calls on the landing page. So you're going to select conversions from phone calls right here. And if you see something different, just kind of try to find something that is, indicative of phone call conversions. We're just going to hit save and continue. And then I want to have a phone call lead as the conversion action. I'm going to hit add conversion actions, and then I want to do calls from website visits. So regardless of what you're seeing on your end, ultimately the conversion action we want to set up for the landing page phone calls is people who call from website visits. So we hit that. And typically what I will do here is I will select this first one. Someone calls a number shown on my website. Select that. And what you're going to do is you need to input the phone number that is on your landing page right here. So I'm going to input a phone number here, skip to the next step, and then we'll kind of keep walking through it. So you're going to put the phone number right here and then the phone number right here. And usually what I do just to be safe is I take the exact formatting as how it is displayed on the landing page and put it here. So if it is formatted like their example here, you want to put it exactly like that. I don't know specifically if that impacts things on this one. They say it does on this one, but just to be safe, I always put it as the exact same formatting in each one of these. So what I'm going to do really quick, I'm going to drop a phone number in here and then skip to the next step. And then you do the same on your end. All right, so once you've saved that, you should see it right here. You're going to hit save and continue. And then once this loads, you are going to get a couple of things right here. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is we need to take this Google tag. This is sort of like a generic tracking tag, and we need to copy this code and then put it on every single page, every single landing page, every single thank you page. And we're going to need to set all that up before anything will even fire. So what I like to do is I just open a little text document right here, and I will hit setup on the Google tag. And usually you're going to see a code that looks something like this. It'll say Google tag and then a bunch of other stuff. I just copy this and then bring it over to our document right here. So we're going to save that for later. And then we have the phone call lead conversion goal. What you want to do, you want to hit see event snippet, and then you're going to have a little script like this, same kind of thing, copy this, and then we are going to save that for later right there. We're going to close that out, and we should be pretty much good for right now. So I'm going to hit finish, and then that conversion action will be set up on Google's end. We still need to install it on the pages themselves, but we're just going to create all of our conversion actions and then come back and then set all that up later. All right, so the next conversion action we're going to make are calls to a phone number on an ad. So same process, we want to create the conversion action, and we're going to do the same thing, conversions from phone calls, save and continue. I'm going to hit see all to see all of your different options here. We're going to do phone call lead once again. We're going to add the conversion actions. This one's a lot simpler. And then we just want to do calls from ads, hit save and continue. And then that's pretty much it. So we just hit finish, and now you have a conversion action for calls from ads. The key with that is in order for that to actually fire, we'll go over this later when we're setting up assets on the campaign. In order for that to actually fire, you need to designate the phone number that you attach to your ad as the actual conversion action. So we'll go over setting that up later. We need to have that set up now. And one thing I do to kind of clean things up a little bit before we get going is it's going to give your conversion actions these kind of default names. If you just click on them, it should open up a page that looks something like this. We can edit our settings here, and then I will typically change this to something that is more specific to what it is. So in this case, I'm just going to call it landing page phone calls, and you can call it whatever is relevant for you. Hit save. And then also, well, it looks like I already have one for that. So I'm just going to add a little modifier there, hit save. And a couple other things now that I'm here that is probably good to go over is in terms of value, I usually don't set a value for the phone calls. You can if you want. It's, you know, if you're doing lead gen, it's a lot tougher to really designate an actual value for that. If we keep going here, make sure this is set for 1, because if you have it set to every, it is going to count every single phone call from that one person. So if one person calls twice, it's going to count it as 2. You don't want to do that. So make sure you have it set to 1. And then the other thing that I usually modify is the call length. Now, this really depends on you and your preferences. I tend to set this shorter, something like 25 seconds, because from my perspective, as somebody who is generating leads for businesses, sometimes businesses don't pick up the phone. I still want to count that as a conversion because that led to an action. So it really depends upon you. If you know, like you're running this for yourself, you know every single phone call is going to get answered, and you know that if it's a 2-minute phone call, it's going to be, you know, a more ideal or a more qualified lead. You could totally do it that way. For me personally, I usually reduce that to like 25 seconds because if a phone call comes in and it doesn't get answered, I still want to count that as a conversion because that's, at least in my opinion, that is still an action that I want to track. Somebody called from the ad, I still want to track that. So again, it's totally up to you. Do that, you know, however is most relevant to you. And for the attribution, I just leave it on data driven. There's other options here. You know, I don't know why they still have these in here, the no longer available ones, but I used to run last click. Nowadays, I just leave it on data driven. I don't really mess with that. And that should be pretty much it in terms of settings for that. And if we go back, it should have saved that name change in there. So yeah, we got that. And then the other one we set up was calls from ad. I'm just going to I don't want to remove that. Sorry. I'm going to go in and I'm going to edit this really quick. And I'm just going to call this one, we'll call this one call asset phone calls. And that's going to help us differentiate from the other conversion actions later on. We're going to save that. And then I'm going to do the same things here for the value and all that other kind of stuff. So we're going to hit don't use a value. And then again, going back to the length, you can do whatever is relevant to you. I'm just going to do 25 seconds for this, and that should be good. And then the last conversion action that we need to set up is our form fill conversion action. So we got our landing page conversion action, we got our call asset conversion action there. And then we got to do that process one more time where we want to create a conversion action. And then we want to do, in this case, conversions on a website. Hit save and continue. And what it's going to do is it wants me to put in the URL. I don't know why they do this these days. It's a little bit annoying, if I'm honest. You have to scan it and then it's a bit of a pain. But what we want to do is enter it in there, hit scan, and then we should be able to create the things that we want to actually set up. So I'm just going to go with this one right here. This is our Google tag. Don't worry about the Google Analytics stuff. We just want the Google tag. Select that, hit done, and then we should be able to hit save and continue. There we go. And then we want to create one for submit lead form. Same process here, hit add conversion actions, and then you should see your Google tag right here. And what I want to do, technically you can enter the URL while the conversion is completed. For this example, I'm going to manually install the code on the page. So we're going to select set up the code manually. And right here, we can actually enter in some of that other information there. This one, I'm just going to call this landing page form submissions. Same thing, we're not going to use a value for it. Count only one, just so we don't get any overlapping conversions there. And then everything there should be good. So we're going to hit done. We're going to hit save and continue. And then same thing here. If you have your Google tag already saved on your document here, this is the event snippet for the lead form. You just go to see event snippet. We're going to copy that and make sure this is on page load. And the way this is going to work is we're going to take this code and put it on the thank you page after somebody submits a form. And then when that thank you page loads, this is how we actually fire that as a conversion. So that page loads, this tag gets fired, and then it feeds back to Google that a conversion actually happened. So again, this is why those thank you pages are very important, because we're going to put this code on that page to fire that. And we're going to close that, and we should be good. Again, I'm not going to go over enhanced conversions in this tutorial, because that's, probably a whole other 30-minute setup thing. So we're going to hit finish, and then we should have our conversion actions created. We've got our landing page phone calls, got the call asset, got the form submission. And what we got to do is we have to actually install all of those codes right now. And what we're going to do, we're going to hop over to the landing page builder. I'm going to show you roughly what you should be looking for and where you need to put it on the page to set up these conversion actions. It's going to be slightly different depending upon the landing page builder you're using, but overall the process is going to be the same. You just need to take these codes and then put them in the head section on the page. And if you're using a landing page builder, it should be a very easy process to just kind of copy and paste these in. And we'll hop over there. I'll show you how to set that up now. All right, so I'm over kind of on the back end of the landing page builder that I use right now. And I'm going to show you what you should be looking for when you need to install that conversion tracking. So like I mentioned, the first thing we need to do is this Google tag code right here. This needs to go on every single page that you have. It needs to go on the landing page, it needs to go on the thank you page. If you have multiple landing pages or multiple thank you pages or whatever, this code needs to go on every single page. And all of these codes need to go in the head tag on the page. So I'm just going to copy this. And on my landing page builder, they have these settings over here. It might be a little bit more simple on what you're using, where there'll probably be something in the settings or the options where it will just give you a spot that says, hey, this is the head section of the page. You can drop the tags in there. For me, I open up this and I have a few different options here. Usually a lot of landing page builders, there's going to be the head section, the body section, and the footer section. We just want to drop things into the head section here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy that code, drop that in, and I now have the Google tag on there. I'm going to hit save, and then that should be in the head section of my page. But I also want to track the phone calls on this page. So we want to take this script and we want to copy that. You could have just, obviously you could go back and just do both of these at the same time, but we want to take our script right here with our phone call tracking, go back over here. We also want to drop that in the head. I'm just going to go right underneath the code that we pasted in there before, and we should have our Google tag in there now. as well as our phone call tracking. And now you hit save. Obviously save it, update it, do whatever you got to do on the page to make sure that's working. And then we want to go over to the thank you page, install that Google tag code as well as our form fill code, and then we can keep going from there. All right, so we're over on the thank you page now, and we're gonna do things a little bit different on this one. So obviously the first thing we need to do is we need to take our Google tag. We want to get that on the page. So we're going to paste that in the head. And then what I like to do on the thank you page, I know that I have phone numbers on there and all that. I usually don't put the phone call tracking on the thank you page, because what can happen is we're going to track those form fills as a conversion. And if somebody hits the thank you page and you're also tracking phone calls on the thank you page, that one person can get double counted as both a form fill and a phone call lead. I don't like doing that because it will end up having a 200% conversion rate if it's from one click. So I like to only count those people that hit this page as a form fill conversion. So I'm going to take that conversion snippet right here, and same thing, we're just going to drop that below our Google tag, and then we're going to hit save. So that way, if somebody submits a form, they will get tracked as a form fill conversion. And then if they call the phone number on this page, then they're not going to get double counted on top of that as another conversion. So save all that, you should be good to go, and then we can keep going. All right, so by this time, you should have your conversion actions set up. You should also have the conversion actions installed on the landing pages themselves. Now, the next thing we got to do to kind of finalize the conversion setup is we need to set up custom conversion goals and then assign those goals to the campaign. So if you come to the conversion section, again, just go to goals. Under conversions, go to summary, and then we scroll down the page here. You're going to see custom goals, this little drop down. There shouldn't be anything in here, and you're just going to go all the way over here to the right and hit add custom goal. We hit that, and then you can name this whatever you want. I'm just going to call this custom conversions. And what you want to do is you just want to select those conversion actions that you made. So you want to select the call asset conversion action that we created, the landing page form submissions, and then the landing page phone call conversion action. Then you just hit save, and you should see your custom conversion action show up right down here. And then what we want to do from there is we want to go back to the campaign that we created, and we want to assign that to the campaign in the settings. So if we go back to campaigns, go into settings right here. So just make sure you have your campaign selected, go to settings. And then once this loads up, we can go into the conversion goals right here. It says account default. We're going to open this up, and then we are going to hit this little drop down right here, go to campaign specific, and then we can just click choose campaign goals. And we've got custom conversions right here, the one that we just created. We can hit save, and then it should be pulling in our custom conversions. And the reason why this is important is we want to tell Google, by assigning these conversion actions to the campaign, I want you to optimize this campaign around these conversion actions, and it will only count these conversion actions toward a conversion on the campaign. So we need to make sure we have this set up so that Google actually is getting the right data and is tracking the right things for our campaign. So we hit save, and then we should be good to go on the conversion action side of things. And if you have any issues with that further down the line, just double check your conversion tracking installation, make sure that's set up properly, make sure it's installed in the right place. And if you do run into any issues with the conversion tracking setup, I would just double check the installation, make sure it's installed in the right place, make sure the codes kind of look proper, they didn't get anything cut off or anything like that. And then we can continue on. And next thing we're going to talk about is actually keywords. So we're going to put together our keywords, put together our negative keywords, and we're actually going to start building out our ad groups for the campaign. All right, so now we can actually start to get our keyword list together. So there's a handful of things that we need to kind of cover in this section. Number one, we got to cover what kind of keywords that we want to go after. We want to go after high intent keywords, kind of keywords that we don't want to go after. And then also we're going to go through how to actually find those keywords. And then on top of that, we need to go over things like match types. So we'll cover that in a little bit. We'll go over the keywords that we need to get first. We'll start getting those keywords together. Then we'll go over wrapping them and then putting them into our campaign as ad groups. So when it comes to actually choosing the keywords that we want to bring into our campaign, ultimately, we want to choose what are called high intent keywords. We don't want to focus on keywords that are too broad. When I say high intent keywords, I'm talking about keywords that actually show that somebody is looking for that service. They're actually looking to make a decision on that service. So in our example that we're doing for this campaign, we're doing tree services. And what happens is if we go too broad with the keywords, our ads can show up for people who are much less likely to convert, show up for a lot of just wide range of really irrelevant stuff. So for example, we want to go after searches like tree services near me, tree removal near me, tree service company in the city that you're in, tree trimming city, etc. We don't want to go after keywords that are just like trees or tree company. Sometimes tree company can work. In some cases, it can be a little bit too broad, or going after really broad things like tree care or tree help. That sort of stuff is way too broad, and the kind of searches your ads are going to show up for are just going to be way all over the place. And they're not going to be people who are going to Google looking to get help with a tree, whether that's trimming, removal, stump grinding, whatever it is. And what is most important is the intent behind the searches needs to be from somebody that's just locally searching for the service that you offer. And if you focus on putting your ads in front of those kind of searches over everything else, that's going to give you the highest chance of getting your ad in front of people who are most likely to convert. So the best way to build these keyword lists and find these keywords, we're going to go back over to the keyword planner, and I'm going to show you how to use that to actually find high intent keywords that we can add to our campaign. So one thing you're probably going to want to have open before we actually start putting together our keywords is I always like to get a spreadsheet. So I just use Google Sheets. I like to get a spreadsheet open just so I can start dropping in the keywords over here. And then we can actually start to use this spreadsheet to kind of group together our ad groups and get a rough idea of what that looks like. So if you go back to that original graphic that I showed, going over campaign structure and how we want to have things into specific ad groups, this will start to make a little bit more sense as we go through the keywords. So if we go back to the campaign dashboard here, to get to the keyword planner, again, go to tools, go underneath planning, and then go to keyword planner. Want to hit discover new keywords, and I am going to just drop in some root keywords and then we can begin searching. All right, so what I did here is I just kind of put in some root keywords here. You don't need to go super specific with this. I just do some root keywords here, and we got our results right down here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to narrow down our location targeting a little bit. I'm just going to do that, and then I'll just throw in Bellevue as well, just because. We'll hit save. And now what we want to do is, again, going back to the high intent keywords, we want to go through this list and then start pulling out high intent keywords, but we also want to pull them out in ad groups. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through this list. We don't need to go through all 1,500, and I'm not going to do that in this video, but we need to go through this list. We need to start pulling out high intent keywords, but also kind of start grouping them into keyword themes. And you'll start to kind of see what I'm talking about as I drop them into the spreadsheet. So as we get going here, the first thing you're going to see here is tree services. This could be a little bit too broad, but when I go over match types, we can actually put this in probably as an exact match keyword, but not a phrase match keyword. And I'll go into a little bit more of why we might want to do that as we get going. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy tree services right here. And I'm just going to come over to our spreadsheet and just drop that right here. So this column right here, as I'm structuring this, are just going to be keywords that are specific more to just tree services kind of searches. We're going to keep going here. We have tree services Seattle. I'm going to take that, drop that in a separate column, because this column right here, this is going to be keywords that are related to somebody searching tree services Seattle. And again, we have another one. These are the ones that I put in. So these are going to be their own ad groups. We're going to have tree removal. So this is going to be, again, its own ad group, tree removal. We got tree trimming. We're going to grab that. That's going to be its own ad group. Stump grinding. That's going to be its own ad group. So what we can start doing is we can start going through here. Again, this is another good high intent keyword because that is somebody going to Google, typing in tree service near me. That is going to be a very high quality search and potentially a very high quality lead. So we want to take that, and because it is related to tree services, we're going to put that under the tree services category here. Depending on your business, arborist could be relevant to you. So I'm just going to drop this over here for now. Might not be relevant to every single business, but yeah, if it's relevant to you, obviously this is for a tree service example. you use your judgment for your particular industry or your particular campaign. So we got another tree removal. This is another example of this could be a little bit too broad, but if you just put it in as like an exact match keyword, it should be fine. So again, tree removal, we're going to take that, drop it under the tree removal category right here. And you can see things like kind of starting to take shape here. Like I said, I'm not going to go through this entire list because we'll be here forever. This is another example right here, a tree cutting service. So tree cutting, I would probably put it in its own ad group. I know it's probably the same category of service compared to like tree trimming, but in terms of the, I guess, verbiage behind it, I'd rather, have an ad specific for tree trimming and then another ad specific for tree cutting. So based upon what somebody searches, you can kind of work those keywords into the ad so it's more relevant to somebody. And continuing on down the list here, we got tree stump removal. Technically, this could go under stump grinding. I'm just going to put it in its own ad group. Continuing on, tree trimming. Same kind of example here. If it could be a little bit too broad, we're just going to put it under here. And we'll go over match types in a little bit. Stump removal, tree surgeon near me. So if that's relevant, you can put that in. Tree doctor. Tree trimming service near me. That's another great high intent keyword. So that would go under tree trimming service. And you can kind of, I think by this point, get the idea of how this all works. You just want to go through this keyword list, start pulling out those high intent keywords, and then actually start grouping them together into these categories like this. Because ultimately what's going to happen is you're going to have X number of keywords in this group, X number of ones in this one, and this one, and this one. And these are going to form your particular ad groups that you're going to put into your campaign. And what I'm going to do really quickly is I'm just going to zoom through this and put together a really rough keyword list. Like don't copy exactly what I'm doing, because just for the purposes of the video, I'm just kind of like slapping this together just so I can give you an example of how to build it on your end. Pretty much go through, find the stuff that's relevant to you, and take your time with it. Don't just spend 10 minutes on it. Because what we're going to do after this is we are going to then go back and put together a negative keyword list, then go over wrapping it and all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to cut this, I'm going to put together that list and then keep going from there. All right, so what I've done is I've put together a pretty rough kind of keyword list here. I didn't spend too much time going through that whole keyword planner, so take a little bit more time than me. Go through it, be thorough, and start pulling out high intent keywords, start structuring them into keyword themes like this. And what we're going to cover now is match types and the importance of match types. Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to just go and take our keywords like this and just copy and paste them into the campaign, because we would be copying and pasting them into the campaign as broad match keywords. And as you might imagine, given the name, broad match means we are going to be showing our ads for a very broad range of things. And if we put in something like tree services broad match, our ads could be showing up for a whole bunch of stuff we don't want to be showing up for. So we need to go over match types. I'm going to show you how to wrap those keywords in those match types, and then we can actually drop them into our campaign and start getting the structure of the campaign put together. So match types, there are a few different kind of match types that we can use. You can see them right here. You have broad match, which is just, like I said, copying those keywords, pasting them into the campaign as is with no modifiers. And that is going to be the broadest. We'll go over some of the more in-depth definitions in just a second. Next thing on the list, you have phrase match. And what that means is you put these little quotes on the keyword, and that's going to tighten down what your ads show for a little bit more. And then the most restrictive kind of keyword match type we have here is exact match, and that's with the little brackets on either end of the keyword. And the match types, they used to, I guess, actually mean something. So it used to be that phrase match would mean that your ads would only show up if that particular phrase was used in the actual search. And then exact match used to literally mean that your ads would show up for that exact keyword in Google search. Nowadays, really look at broad to exact match, like broad, phrase, and exact, as kind of a scale of how broad you're willing to let Google go with what they show your ads for. So broad match is going to be the most broad, and generally broad match is going to mean that if it is even loosely related to that kind of keyword theme, it could show for, and we'll get more into that in a second. Phrase match is a little bit more tightened down, And phrase match is sometimes, it kind of feels like you're sort of giving Google like the intent of what you want to show the ads for. And then exact match is furthermore kind of trimmed down and more focused. But one thing you'll notice is the more focused and the more specific you go. So exact match, for example, will be generally the most expensive keyword to bid on, whereas broad match is going to be the least expensive. But the problem with broad match is your ads are going to be showing up for a lot of relevant stuff. So everybody generally wants to go after exact match and phrase match to try to get the most focused traffic, which ultimately is what we want from Google. Now, when it comes to broad match, I almost always recommend avoiding broad match, especially if you're just starting out, if you're just launching your first campaign. Broad match should generally be avoided. It's going to show your ads for things that are even loosely related to the theme of your keywords. For example, if you just had a broad match keyword in there that just was tree service, the ads could show up for such a wide range of stuff. You could be showing up for garden centers, how-to searches for tree care, DIY searches, products, all this kind of stuff. Like, your ads could show up for, tree services near me, but it could also show up for all this other stuff. And we want to avoid showing up for all that other stuff, because if somebody's looking for how to do tree pruning by myself, like how do I do tree pruning or something like that, and somebody clicks on your ad, you're still going to get charged for that click. So a big part of Google Ads is weeding out all of that crap that you don't want coming through your campaign, because if you're getting crappy traffic and people are clicking on your ads, you are still going to get charged, and we don't want to have that happen. So if you're just starting out, I would avoid broad match. And broad match, it can work. It's just you need to have a very, very big negative keyword list, which we'll cover in a little bit. Phrase match, this is a little bit more tightened down compared to broad match. But again, going back to that whole negative keyword list thing that I just mentioned, you're going to need to have a sizable negative keyword list, which we will, like I said, go over how to build in this video. And you're going to want to have a negative keyword list regardless, but phrase match is just going to tighten things down a little bit. And the way I like to think about phrase match keywords is it's almost like you're not bidding on the keyword itself, but almost like the intent of the keyword. So in this example here, like a phrase match keyword that is tree companies could for sure show up for tree companies near me, tree companies in my city, but it's almost like Google takes that phrase match keyword and uses it as more of like an intent signal, if that makes sense. So if somebody's going to Google and they type in a competitor brand name search or an unrelated tree product company, you putting in phrase match tree companies is almost like telling Google, hey, even if that person is searching for a local tree service company, like another competitor brand, the ad could still show up for that kind of stuff too. So it's very much like Google takes that suggestion very literally and shows for, could show for tree companies near me, but it could also literally show up for somebody searching for a separate branded tree service company or a product company or something like that. And it's sometimes not super focused. So you do have to be careful with phrase match keywords. And if they get too broad like this, like tree companies or just phrase match tree services, it can kind of almost act a bit like a broad match keyword where, again, it's almost looking at the intent of the search and not the actual keyword. And if you just have phrase match tree services in there, for example, it could show up again for tree services near me and all like kind of good quality traffic, but it could show up for things that are kind of loosely related to the intent of tree services. So it might not be that specific keyword, or it could be some kind of loosely related service, more kind of related to like pest control, maybe around like termites or something like that, or some kind of infestation, and that's the kind of tree service that it shows the ad for. So you've got to be really careful with phrase match, and usually with phrase match, I try to wrap more of the higher intent keywords as phrase match, so things like tree services near me, tree services Seattle, tree removal near me, things like that, and I try to avoid going with things that are too broad, like tree services, tree companies, or what, very, very simple, like 1 or 2 word keywords as phrase match, because those can effectively be like broad match keywords. If you need more traffic, you can go with that, but typically I would recommend, if you're going to do phrase match, which I do recommend, is try to keep it more towards the higher intent keyword. Then the final one we have is exact match, and these obviously they are no longer exactly matched to the keyword. those keywords are going to show your ads for searches that are pretty much as closely related to that keyword as possible. And there's definitely going to be variations on that keyword, but the intent of that search will be as closely related as possible to that exact match keyword. And like I mentioned before, keep in mind that these keywords are going to have the least amount of traffic typically, and they're usually going to be the most expensive, but these are going to have the most targeted and high quality traffic. And it's usually the reason why a lot of people prefer to just go after these keywords, because they're going to be the highest quality. Even if they're a little bit more expensive, the quality of the leads that come from those keywords are going to be generally the best quality. So an example for this is bidding on tree services near me as an exact match keyword could show your ads for tree services near me, but it could also show it for tree service companies in my area, tree service companies near me, tree services in city, etc., etc. Like, it's still going to be very, very closely related, but Google can kind of elect to make a judgment call as long as it's not like super far outside of the intent of tree services near me. It's most likely going to show the ad for that. And in the negative keyword section, we can go a little bit into how to control that a little bit more. You don't have to go overboard with it, but there are ways to kind of, for example, if you want this keyword to not show up for somebody searching for tree services Seattle, there's a way to add in negative keywords on different ad groups to prevent that from happening. But those are match types. And typically what I do for my campaigns is I will take my keyword list and I will wrap them in phrase match and exact match for the same keyword. So tree services near me, for example, would be phrase match and exact match, and then just drop both of those into the campaign, and then just kind of let Google figure out which one works better. And some of them will just do exact match only because it might be a little bit too broad. But that's usually what I do, is I use both at the same time, see what works better, see what works worse, and then trim out the stuff that's not working as well. And in cases where there just hasn't been enough traffic, I've just gone all phrase match. And yeah, it's kind of one of those things to test out. But for this example, I would just go phrase and exact, and we will kind of go over how to wrap those right now. And then we'll go over dropping them into the campaign. And after that, we'll go over negative keywords as well. So before we actually drop these keywords into the campaign, we have to actually wrap these keywords in those match types before we drop them in. Because like I said, if we just copy and paste these in, they're all going to be broad match. So there's a couple ways to actually do this. You do not want to do this manually because it would be a massive pain. You could probably take all these keywords, plug them into ChatGPT, and that could probably do it for you. But there's a couple ways that are super easy. So on the free route, you can just go to Google and type in something like Google Ads keyword wrapper. And there's going to be a lot of tools like this where you can literally just go to your spreadsheet, copy one of these ad groups right here, bring it over here, paste it in, hit wrap keywords. And a lot of these services have really just kind of multiple different ways that you can kind of pull these out. And you would just use this and wrap it like this. You can do Command A, copy, and now you have your wrapped keyword list like that. So I would highly encourage leveraging a tool like that. The tool that I use personally, and I have it, kind of shameless plug here. I have it in the tools section on that page. It's called Keyword Me. This tool has been phenomenal for me. I use it literally every single time I'm working on campaigns for optimization and negative keywords and all that. It's a very, very simple keyword tool, and you can do this very easily. You just open it up, hit add keywords. I can paste my list in there right now. I just need to do it properly, obviously. So we take our keywords from the spreadsheet, add them in. We got it there, hit add keywords, and it just automatically does it like this. And I can say, hey, I only want exact, I only want phrase. If you want broad, you can add broad in too. And now you have your phrase and exact keywords. You just hit copy, and then we can bring it over to the campaign and drop it in. So this tool is phenomenal. It is a paid tool. And again, that link is in the description to that tools page. Like I said, I use this every single day. So it's a bit of a plug, but it is like a genuine, this thing saves me so much time with campaign optimization that it's a really good tool for Google Ads. So that is one way to do it. Alternatively, you just want to do the free way. You can Google for keyword wrapping tools and do it that way. And what we're going to do is we're going to wrap all of that and then drop them into the campaign. And what we're going to do is we are going to take those keywords, go over to the campaign, and then drop them into an ad group. All right, so now that we have that first ad group wrapped, we are going to start kind of putting together our ad groups one by one. And what I did is I just copied that first ad group and put it in here. And one thing I am going to do, because I did mention this, is I'm going to take out this phrase match version of tree services, because personally, I think that would be way too broad. If I needed more traffic further down the line, I could add that in. But that kind of keyword, I can just foresee a lot of really irrelevant random traffic coming from it. And before I even paste that in, if you have something like that, I would probably take it out and just roll with stuff like this. But what we want to do is just copy those keywords that we wrapped. Just going to copy that. And then right from our dashboard here, you can see this ad group tab right here. This is that default ad group that we put in there before. I am just going to pause this. You can totally remove it if you want. But what we want to do, just hit that little blue plus. It's going to do the create an ad group step here. Select an ad group. Just keep it standard. Don't worry about that. And I'm just going to call this tree services. And you want to name this ad group just in alignment with that keyword theme that you have. It's not going to impact your performance. It's really for organization. So think about ad groups kind of like folders. We're just kind of using these ad groups to organize everything. So put the name in there, hit next. All right, so we got our ad group name right here. And then really all we want to do, don't worry about any of this right now. You can put your URL in there if you would like. This is just for like keyword suggestions, but we just want to go down here and then paste in our keywords right here. So we have our ad group keywords there. Everything here, don't worry about any of this. And we are just going to skip the ad creation step right now. We're going to come back to this later. I just like to get all the ad groups in there, get all the keywords in there so we can get the structure, and then we will go back and do the ads later. So we're just going to scroll down here. I'm going to hit cancel. So it's not going to create an ad, and we're going to hit save and continue. And now we have our first ad group in the campaign. And then what you want to do from there is you want to go through that exact same process again for every single ad group in the campaign. Just follow that same process again and go through your keywords, wrap them, drop them into your ad groups, and then you can get all of your ad groups into your campaign. I'm going to actually pause the video right now, get my ad groups into the campaign, and then we can move on to getting our negative keyword list together. All right, so I've got all my ad groups in here, and you can see I kind of split things up a little bit more specifically. We've got two different kind of geo ad groups. So I split up tree services and tree removal. In your case, it's obviously going to be totally unique to the campaign that you're building, but just remember that each one of these ad groups has to have its own kind of intent, its own kind of theme to it. So just as long as all the keywords within each one of these ad groups are specific to that intent or that theme, you're going to be good to go. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hop back over to the presentation, and then let's start going over negative keywords. All right, so negative keywords, these are a very, very important part of your campaign. So do not neglect this before you launch your campaign, and then definitely don't neglect it when your campaign is running. So negative keywords are essentially the opposite of what a keyword is. They just tell Google what you don't want your ads showing up for. So they are incredibly important, just like I said, and especially even more so nowadays, because with the way keywords have changed, with the way match types have changed, you almost have to direct Google towards the traffic you want them to show your ads for with those negative keywords, because things like phrase match and exact match are not as specific as they used to be. You need to make sure you have those kind of guardrails in place with negative keywords to make sure that your ads are not showing up for things you don't want to be showing up for. And if you neglect adding negative keywords to your campaign, you're going to get a ton of garbage traffic that you don't want. And again, if somebody clicks on your ad for something that is irrelevant to you, you're still going to get charged for that click. So you need to have those negative keywords in place to clean up your traffic to make sure you're getting high quality traffic to your campaign. Now, there's a couple of different times that you're usually going to build a negative keyword list. Number one is before you launch your campaign, you want to get as many negatives on that keyword list as possible. And I'm going to go through these right now one by one, but then I'm going to go and actually show you how to find those negative keywords with these different methods. And then the other way to build that negative keyword list is when your campaign is running. You can see the last one on the list here, search terms report. This is going to be so critical. Every single time you go in to optimize your campaign, you're going to want to go through your search terms report and add more negative keywords, because that's going to keep refining and cleaning up the traffic on your campaign. So going through this list, where to find negative keywords. Number one on this list is the easiest. You can just go to Google and look up common negative keywords, And there's going to be a ton of websites that just have, a list of 500, 1,000, 2,000 common negative keywords. And a lot of these are going to be relevant regardless of your industry. They're things like free, no cost. If you want to filter out things like price or how much or how to and all that kind of stuff, those kind of keywords are going to be relevant regardless of your industry. And those are the type of keywords that I pretty much put in every single campaign as a negative. Another thing that's good, especially nowadays with how kind of location targeting works and all that sort of stuff, it's really helpful to kind of negative out other states, other cities that you don't want your ads to show in. So by default on all of my campaigns, I negative out every other state that the campaign is not showing in, as well as the abbreviation for that state. And then on top of that, what I've been doing recently is I will actually, within the state that I'm advertising in, I'll try to incorporate other city names into that negative keyword list as well, because you'll still see sometimes that your ads will show up for random searches outside of your location targeting, and you want to make sure your ads aren't showing up for that. Another really good thing that you want to do, especially before you launch your campaign, is add in local and national competitors or related companies. A really easy way to do this is just go to Google Maps, look up local competitors, and then add their brand names in as negative keywords. Another thing you can do is with the keyword planner, you can just scroll through it and find a bunch of negative keywords from there to add to your negative keyword list before you launch your campaign. And then, like I mentioned before, the search terms report, when the campaign is running, this is the most basic optimization you want to be doing on your campaign, is just going through that search terms report regularly and then adding more and more negative keywords as the campaign goes. So all that out of the way, let me walk through these one by one, show you where to find them, and then how to add them to your campaign once we get that list together. All right, so the first thing on our list is probably the easiest. It's just going to Google and looking up common negative keywords. Now, what I like to do when I'm doing this is make sure you have your spreadsheet open with your keywords. I just put another tab in there for negative keywords, and then I'll just drop my negative keywords in a list here. And like I said, you just go to Google, look up common Google Ads negative keywords or something like that. And there's a ton of different websites that have just lists of negative keywords. This one has 1,500. Keep scrolling. This one looks like has 400 plus, 101. You don't need to go through all of them, but I'm just kind of showing you how many there are here. And what I would do is I would literally just scroll through this and then look through all of this and then see what is relevant to you. A lot of this is most likely going to be relevant to a lot of industries. So things like cheap, directions, Facebook, I would put that on every single campaign as a negative, free, all that kind of stuff. So go through these, pull a lot of these, and then add them to your list. And same thing as adding keywords to the campaign. I would literally just take stuff like free, come over to the keyword spreadsheet, drop it in, and start building my negative keyword list that way. Now, number 2 on that list, when it comes to states and cities and all that kind of stuff, you could go to Google, but I have found just going to ChatGPT and saying something like this: can you provide me with a list of all the states in the United States with their abbreviations in a format that I can copy and paste into Google Ads campaign as negative keywords? And it just gives me a list that is pretty much perfect to work with. So what you can do is just copy this, and then let's see if I can just drop it straight into the spreadsheet. It drops straight into the spreadsheet like that, which is awesome. It looks like I got to do a little bit of formatting here to get rid of that, but just check through it, make sure it's good. And then another thing that's really important with these kind of negative keywords with the states, there's some of these that you don't want to have in, like CO could be company. So something like that, I would get rid of. IN for Indiana, I would delete that, because obviously if somebody looks for, tree services in Seattle, we don't want that to mess things up. So check through these. Obviously don't just copy and paste everything and walk away. You want to make sure these are all good and that you are not putting things in there that are going to conflict with your keywords. So go through these, take stuff out that is not good, and then you can move on from there. So that's how I would do the state stuff. And then obviously, for us, we're going to be in Washington. I'm going to remove Washington from those keywords and we can keep going. Now, when it comes to other cities and everything in the state you're advertising in, for whatever reason, ChatGPT does not want to do that for me. So what you could do is you can just look up a list. Alternatively, you can literally just go to Maps, zoom out, and then kind of do it the old-fashioned way, I guess you could say, is outside of your targeted location, you can just start adding in different locations. I would focus on kind of the more major things. So for me, maybe Vancouver, Portland, Spokane, and then just try to pick some of these other ones, add them to your list. It might help, it might not help, but it's just better, in my opinion, to have more negative keywords than less, because that's going to kind of protect you and make sure that your ads are not showing up for something that could be way out of your targeting location. Like if I only want to show up in Seattle, I don't want to be showing up for searches about Tacoma. So I want to add Tacoma in as a negative keyword. And that kind of sums up the other states and cities. And then we can move on to the local and national competitors and adding those to your negative keyword list. And I guess really the best way to start that is actually right here on the on Google Maps. So the first thing I always do with any campaign is I will look up any local competitors in the areas that I'm advertising in. So I just type in tree services here. And then what you want to do is, outside of obviously your brand name, I would go through here and then add all of these as negative keywords. And one thing that I do as well is I try to add the root of their name. So for this one, for example, integrity, I would just come back to our negative keywords and just type in integrity, and then that would be our negative keyword for that particular brand. So if somebody types in integrity tree services instead of integrity tree works, it's still going to not show up for that particular search. For this one, I would probably just type in sound tree care as the negative keyword. And what you want to do, you want to go through this list and then add in, the root of their brand name as a negative keyword to make sure that your ads are not showing up for people searching specifically for those businesses. Another place that I like to go to as well is I like to go to Yelp and then look for brands on there too, because there's some people, they just have a bigger presence on Yelp, and for whatever reason, they're just not on Google Maps. So I like to go to Yelp, get brand names from there as well, and you're going to find a ton of different people you can add your negative keyword list. So go through all this, add those in. And then when it comes to national brands or competitors, one thing I tend to kind of gravitate towards is really just sort of industry specific. So if it's a home service type of business, you're probably going to be looking at adding in negatives like Lowe's, Home Depot. For example, in industries like tree services, there are big national brands that service all over the United States. You want to add those in as negatives. So it's really industry specific. Make sure you add those in. So with all that added to your negative keyword list, we can then move on to getting negatives from the keyword planner. All right, so we're back in the keyword planner. I just put some pretty broad keywords up here to get started, and same kind of idea as finding keywords. You want to go through here and then find things that are just not going to be relevant. Sometimes maybe there's services that you don't offer. So if something like tree surgeon or tree doctor would be irrelevant to you, you're more looking for tree trimming, tree removal, stuff like that, you could add in doctor or surgeon as a negative keyword. So something like land clearing right here would be a great example of something I don't want to show up for. I can just take that, come up here to my little keyword tool, copy this phrase, and then just drop it over to my keyword spreadsheet. This is another example of a national brand, Davey. That's one thing you would obviously want to add into your negative keyword list if you are in tree services. Going through this, you're going to find a ton of stuff that will be relevant to you. And same kind of idea, you want to just keep going through this, find stuff that is irrelevant, and just add it to your negative keyword list. And one thing you're going to notice is there's a ton of results. You don't have to go through all of them, but the more of them that you go through and add your negative keyword list, it's probably going to save you a bit of headache further down the line. Doing that will definitely help. And another thing that I like to do is I'll select kind of a wider range around the targeted location, but also it can help to just go nationwide. There's a lot more search volume to pick from there to see if there's other random things that might show up. But at the very least, target the location that you're in and then see what other people are searching and then add those as negatives. And then the final thing on our list here is the search terms report. This is going to be relevant once your campaign is actually running. And to get there, you go to Insights and Reports, go to Search Terms. And when your campaign is running, you're going to see everything that your ads showed up for. You're not going to see every single little search term. There's kind of like privacy and search privacy kind of stuff that you're not going to see everything with. But as you go through, you're going to see things that you don't want to show up for. And same kind of idea, you can just go through here. I cover this in my optimization video, so I'm not going to go into depth here. But you can add all of these as negative keywords to your campaign. And there's going to be a ton as you get going, especially early on. There's going to be a lot of keywords that you don't want to show up for. So you're just going to monitor these search terms. You're going to add them to your negative keyword list. And the more you do that, the more you're going to clean up your traffic. Now, when you have your negative keyword list together, adding them to your campaign is very, very easy. And obviously you want to have more than this. Usually before I get a campaign together, really kind of digging into things, I will have hundreds of negative keywords. As a campaign gets going, that negative keyword list is going to grow into the thousands as it keeps going. Once you have that together, you just want to copy them. And then I'm just going to use my tool up here to wrap them. Same kind of idea as before, you just want to wrap them. I usually just do them as phrase. There are certain instances where you just want to have an exact match. So match types work very, very literally when it comes to negative keywords. So if you put in an exact match negative keyword, your ad won't show up for that exact phrase or that exact search term. So there's sometimes searches that are very, very close to something that could be a good keyword. In that case, I'll just add it in as a negative. Really just kind of use your judgment, but put those in there, wrap them, copy that, and then we want to come back to our campaign. So under keywords, you go to audiences, keywords, and content, go to keywords. There's this other tab called negatives. You open this up, and then when it loads, there's gonna be a little blue plus. You go in here, make sure you have your campaign selected, and then you can add them to the campaign level right here. Paste those in there, hit save, and then you're good to go. One other thing that's really important to kind of take note of is you can add negative keywords to the ad group level. So there could be certain instances, especially with this sort of campaign, where I do not want ads for certain ad groups showing up for certain search terms. So for example, if somebody is searching for stump grinding, I don't want a tree services, like kind of a general tree services keyword to trigger the tree services ad for a stump grinding search. So sometimes what I like to do is I like to add in sort of root keywords on an ad group level to make sure that the traffic is getting funneled into the right ad groups. So within the Seattle stump grinding ad group, I would probably add in negatives for Bellevue, or maybe something like tree trimming or tree removal into that ad group. So that way those ads are only showing for stump grinding Seattle keywords. So again, this is more of a judgment thing, and it's something you can get a sense of once you get the campaign going and you see what different keywords are showing up for. You can add ad group level negatives, and sometimes those can be really good to make sure that your ads that you're showing to those searches are really, really relevant, because I want my ads to show up for, what somebody is searching for. I want all that to be relevant. So you can add in ad group level negatives. You can do that if you want. Something that I do personally, I'm not going to walk through that because it's literally the exact same process of what we just did. It's just instead of dropping at the campaign level, you're dropping it at the ad group level. So that's something to take note of. It's something you might want to do as well. And now that we have our negative keyword list together, we can get moving on our ads. I'm going to go over some best practices, things you want to do, and how you can actually leverage things like ChatGPT to make that process a little bit easier and to kind of get those together a little bit quicker. All right, so to actually start putting our ads together, what we need to do is under campaigns, we just go to ads. And from this screen, usually what I like to do is I like to select whatever ad group I want to create the ad in first. So I am probably just going to go with tree services. You can start wherever you want on your campaign. I'm going to go tree services, and then within here, you just click the little blue plus sign, and we are going to make a responsive search ad. So up here, up at the top, there's asset generation. The way this works, you put in a URL here, and Google will kind of automatically generate assets and everything for your ad. I don't really mess with this too much. I kind of write all the ads on my own or with an AI or something like that to come up with the content. If you want to use this, you can. It's not really something I use too much. So with the ads themselves, you're going to be making a responsive search ad. And the way these work is Google gives you a ton of different options for headlines, and you can hit this little blue plus sign. It opens up a ton more options here. And what Google does is you give them headlines and descriptions, you give them assets, which we'll go over in a little bit. Everything down here, these are all assets. They're little add-ons to the ad. I'll cover that in the next step. We're just going to focus on writing the ad right now. But the way this works is Google will rotate all of these different headlines, all these different descriptions, and they will figure out, what mixes and matches to give you the best possible result from that ad. So it used to be that you would put in just a couple headlines, couple descriptions, and that was it. You had a lot more control, a lot more granular control. Nowadays, you just have to feed Google a bunch of different headlines, different descriptions, and then kind of let them do their thing. And what I'm going to go over for the ad stuff here is I'm not going to write this out bit by bit because like everybody's going to have a different campaign or different industry they're running in. I'm just going to give you some guidelines that I typically do, and then I'm going to show you how I use something like ChatGPT to help me come up with ideas for creating headlines and descriptions for a campaign. So the first thing you want to put in here, the final URL, this is where you're going to put your landing page URL. So wherever the traffic is going to go, you want to put the URL right here. Now, don't get that confused with display path right here. This, whatever you put in here, this is not where the traffic is going to go. So you want to put your landing page URL here, and then within the display path, I tend to work in the keyword that I'm targeting. So for this particular ad group, it would literally just be tree services. And I would make that display path specific to whatever ad group you are creating an ad in, because again, we want that to be specific to the keywords, specific to what people are searching, so it can be a little bit more relevant. So moving on with the ad, you want to fill in every single headline and every single description. And with the headlines, there's some certain things that I recommend that you do. So what I typically do is I bundle them into kind of different categories. So you're going to want to have keyword specific headlines. So based upon the ad group that you're in, you want to have headlines that incorporate the keyword. So you can see they have little guidelines here based on the keywords you have in the campaign. So I'd want to have headlines about, tree services, tree care services near me, tree contractors near me. If you have a specific location in the ad group, you can do tree services Seattle, tree services Bellevue, and then kind of mix and match different location or kind of keyword based headlines. That's one group that I kind of put things into. Another group that I typically do with these headlines is I will put in call to actions. So that's another bucket of headlines and descriptions and all that I usually put in. Is the calls to action are things like call for a quote, book an estimate today, whatever specific for your business. If you have specific offers around specific pricing, you can put that in there as well. And then a third bucket that I do with the headlines and descriptions is I like to incorporate either like benefits or differentiators into those headlines, because those, they can help you kind of stand out, whether it's talking about your reviews, years in business, different certifications you have, licensure, insurance, all that sort of stuff. You want to get all those different types of headlines into here. And again, fill out every single one of these and then do the same thing with the descriptions as well. Mix and match different things, incorporate the keyword in there, get calls to actions in there, come up with different benefits or differentiators. It's going to be unique to your business. So that's, again, why I'm not showing you like, hey, write this thing in here. It's going to be specific to you and what you're doing. A couple other things that I will show you really quick that you can kind of mess around with and test to see how they work. You can do dynamic keyword insertion on your ads. So if you type in this little kind of squiggly bracket right here on your keyboard, you can do a couple of different things. You got location insertion. I don't really mess with countdown timers or anything like that. I usually just mess around with keyword insertion and location insertion. Keep an eye on it though, because sometimes it might not really work as well as you want. But what happens is, let's say you do keyword insertion, pretty much what's going to happen is Google is going to dynamically insert the keyword that somebody types in. And what you do, it gives you this little default text box. So if I just wanted to say tree services near you as the kind of like default keyword, if it can't sub in the keyword that somebody typed, it'll default to that. And you can just hit apply, and then that will dynamically swap in a keyword based on what somebody types. Another thing you can do is location insertion. So this is actually pretty interesting. It will dynamically insert a location based on where somebody is like physically located. So what I would do typically before I put in the bracket is I would put in maybe the main keyword. So like tree services, put in the bracket, and you can insert a location, and then same kind of idea as the keyword. You can insert sort of like a default text, kind of as like a fail safe in case the location thing doesn't work. And I would just put in like Seattle or something like that. So that way with this headline, it will swap in wherever they're physically located. And that's another great way to try to get a little bit more specificity, better click-through rate, sometimes better conversion rates. But again, this is just something to test. So what you want to do with this, like I said, get your different headlines in here, group them into a few different buckets, get keyword specific headlines, get call to action headlines, get benefit headlines. And if you want to get creative, you can kind of do other things as well. And same thing with the descriptions. Make sure you're filling all 4 of these out all the way up to 90 characters. Well, it doesn't have to be exactly 90 characters, but take up as much space as you can. Get your benefits, get your calls to action, get your keywords in there. And then everything below here, like I said, these are all assets. We're going to cover those in the next step. And we'll go over, how to set these up and some of the things you want to have in these. So don't worry about setting these up right now. When you've put in all of your headlines, all of your descriptions, come down here, hit save ad, and then you can move on to populating ads in the other ad group. And really quickly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over to ChatGPT, show you some ways you can use that to help you brainstorm some headlines and descriptions. So another thing that I like to use when it comes to mainly just brainstorming ideas for ads is I usually like to use ChatGPT. Recently, I've been messing around with Claude a little bit, but ChatGPT is good and kind of helps you get some brainstorming going. And I'm also using ChatGPT because it's the most common thing that people are using right now. But if you have a preferred option, you could probably do the exact same thing in that. And I use this mainly as a brainstorming tool. I tend to avoid just taking everything that it says and then just copying and pasting. I will take it, generate ideas, and then kind of assemble ads, and then sort of assemble headlines and descriptions and everything from there. And it's really, really simple. So I'm just over on a free ChatGPT account right now, and the prompts don't need to be too wild. The thing I'm starting with right now is I'm creating a Google Ads campaign for a tree service company based in Seattle and need to create headlines for a responsive search ad. Can you create 20 different headlines for a tree service company based in Seattle in as close to 30 characters each as possible? So we'll see what it gives back. So it's going to give me 20 different headline ideas, and some of them are not ideal. They're not exactly what I'm looking for. So again, take a lot of this with a grain of salt. Some of it, you can kind of tweak and change things. So the next thing I'm going to ask it is maybe to incorporate some calls to action. So can you generate 20 more headlines, incorporate more calls to action to get people to book an estimate? So 20 CTA driven headlines, schedule a tree estimate, get a free quote, book a free quote. Some of these are a little basic, but some things that have worked in the past for me for different campaigns is you can actually start giving it different kind of directions in terms of like, hey, incorporate a little bit of humor. So that could be another idea that you can do. Create 20 humorous tree service headlines. So this is another way that you can maybe try to figure out different ideas. Again, I just use this purely as a brainstorming tool because like I said, you're going to go through a lot of these ideas. Some of them are going to be not that great, or to be honest, they're going to be very, very basic. So the prompts that you give it, the things that you direct it to do will kind of help that brainstorming process. And then you can do the exact same thing with descriptions. So I'm going to write another prompt in here to see if we can get it to spit out some descriptions. So very, very simple thing that I just wrote in here. Can you create 10 different descriptions for a responsive search ad for a tree service company in Seattle? Each description should be under 90 characters. We'll see what it gives us back. It's going to give us 10 concise ad descriptions. So again, you can use this as a brainstorming tool. Google has different AI tools that'll kind of do the same sort of thing. But like I said, use this as a brainstorming thing and then try to kind of take the suggestions that it gives you and then tweak them bit by bit to try to, create something a little bit more unique for either your business specifically or your client or whatever it might be. But this is a tool that I use to try to make this process a little bit easier because I can tell you from experience, it is not my favorite thing in the world to come over here and then try to manually come up with all these different headlines, all these different descriptions. And then not only this, usually what you want to do is you want to have at least like a couple of ads per ad group to come up with different headlines and descriptions for. And doing all that manually can be kind of exhausting and a little bit tedious. So using this is a great way to kind of brainstorm different ideas. All right, so once you have your ad all filled out, you have your landing page here, you got your display path here with the keyword, got all your headlines, got all your descriptions. Like I said, you can skip all this. You just want to come down here, hit save ad. And then that will add the ad to the ad group. If you have two-factor authentication set up like me, it'll pop this up. So let me take care of this, and then we'll jump back to the ad group. So once your ad is created, you should see it show up right here in the ad group that you created it in. If you're not seeing it or if it's paused or anything like that, just hit this little button here and you can change the filters. So you can look at enabled, paused, all ads. So if you're not seeing it, you can change that up. And one thing you can do to make this process easier, because like I said, with creating ads, what you usually want to do is you want to create 2 different ads for each of these ad groups at least to start, because part of the optimization process is you just want to keep testing new ads, keep testing new headlines, new descriptions to try to improve your click-through rate, improve your conversion rate. And one of the best ways to do that is you take 2 ads, run them against each other in one ad group, and then see which one converts better, pause the one that's converting worse, and then you can create a new ad based off of the winner to see if you can keep improving things. So what you want to do is create 2 per ad group to start. But what we can do to make that a little bit easier is we can take the one that we already created. We can literally copy this. So if you have, let's say, you've got this ad group, tree services, I don't think that I really need to create an entirely new ad for something like tree services Seattle, for example. So you could take that ad that we just made, click it, copy it, hit paste, and then it will pop this up. You just select the campaign, make sure you have your ad group selected, hit done, and then just hit paste, and it'll just paste that ad into the other ad group. So you can leverage that tool to kind of create additional ads quicker. And one thing you can do is take that exact ad, paste it into, say, the tree trimming, tree pruning ad group, something like that, and just tweak the keywords and the different language in the ad to make it relevant to that ad group. So use that as a tool to kind of speed up the process a little bit. But like I said, when you have that ad done, go through, create ads for each of the different ad groups, have 2 in each, and then from there, you should have all of your ads in your campaign as a good starting point. And then we can start putting together our assets, which we'll talk about in the next step. All right, once you have your ads together, the next thing you want to have on your campaign is your assets. You want to have these on your campaign because these are actually, kind of think of them like add-ons to your ads. And these will help you take up a little bit more real estate on Google search and ultimately can help you get a better click-through rate on your ads, which will help you in the long run. So with this particular section of the video, I'm not going to go step by step on setting all of these up because that would be a whole 30-minute video in and of itself. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the ones that I set up on a lot of my campaigns and some guidelines when it comes to setting those up. Because setting these up, it's all very self-explanatory. It's the exact same kind of process as everything else. It's just there's certain things that you want to do for some of these, like the call asset, for example, that you don't want to skip. So let's go through them, and I will go through the ones that I like and give you some guidelines on it. So the number one most important one I would say on any of these assets here is the call asset. So with the call asset, in order to create an asset, let's back up really quick. In order to create an asset, you just click on whichever one it is, you hit the little blue plus sign, and it's just like adding anything else to the campaign. You just kind of fill out a bit of information and hit save. With the call asset, the first thing you want to keep in mind is the phone number you use on this call asset needs to be on the landing page in some place. So if you're using a different tracking number for this phone call asset, you need to have this on the landing page. Typically, I'll put it in like the footer or something like that. But if you're just using the main phone number from the landing page, you can just do that. Just the key is it has to be on the landing page. And where this call asset is going to show up is usually right here. This position could change just, now, maybe a year from now, Google might switch something up. But the phone number will show up on the ad itself in Google. And the reason why this is so important is because a certain percentage of people are literally just going to see your ad in Google and then hit the tap to call button right there from Google. And it's very important to have this on your ad because it might result in another 10 plus leads a month. It really obviously depends on the industry, but you want to have that phone number on the ad itself because without it, you're just going to be missing out on more phone call leads. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you have the phone number here, the same as on the landing page. And then also going back to that conversion action that we set up before, if you want to make sure these get tracked as that conversion action, you need to come down to this little drop down right here. And then we have to select the conversion action that we set up, call asset phone calls right there. And then we just hit save, to create that conversion action. So going down the list here, that is the number one thing that I would prioritize over all of this. Another thing that I really like to add onto my campaigns are image assets. Now, Google is sometimes a little bit finicky with this. Sometimes they don't allow you to add an image asset because your account might not be verified yet. So you might have to go through a verification process. Also, Google sometimes doesn't let you create those image assets if you just haven't been, running your campaign for a little while. So it could be different based on your account. Image is another one that I really recommend. But again, sometimes you need to have a more mature account, or maybe an account that's spent a little bit and it's been verified before you can actually add those images. Something to test out. And I like putting those on the ads because I do think it helps a little bit with the click-through rate to kind of help your ads stand out in search. Other ones that I really, really like, I will add business name and business logo to campaigns. Keep in mind that Google sometimes just doesn't approve these like very, very easily. So if Google, disapproves the business name or the business logo, it's usually some kind of random thing like business irrelevance or something like that. I wouldn't worry about it. These two are not super, super important. I'm sure they can help a little bit, but it's not something that I would really say moves the needle a ton. I would try to get it approved, but if it doesn't, don't worry too much about it. Another one that's really important is site link. And there's a couple of things to keep in mind with site links. So with site links, I typically like to try to use them as another way to have, say, like a call to action on the ad, or maybe if you have like a different service. One site link I like to usually put on is, some kind of a basic call to action, like call for an estimate, call for a free quote. It's really dependent upon what industry you're in, what those calls to actions would be. For this tree service example, maybe another one could be like book an estimate in minutes or something like that. Or the site links could literally just link off to other landing pages for other services. So one of these could be tree removal, one of them could be tree trimming, one of them could be stump grinding, but I like to keep these more call to action and benefit focused. And in this first line right here is where you'd put the site link text, and then you can put 2 description lines as well. And I'll usually fill out these description lines too. They're not going to display all the time, but if your ad displays further up in search, usually if it displays in the first position on search, sometimes it will show you the site link text with the description underneath it. So you have like 4 additional spots below your ad, and your ad could take up a ton of space at the top of search. One thing that's really important to keep in mind with site links is that each one of these needs to have a different final URL. So if you only have, say, like one landing page, you technically can just duplicate out that landing page and just have a different final URL for each of those landing pages. You can't send all of the site links to one URL. That is against Google terms of service. They might flag you. So that is something to keep in mind. If you're doing site links, you want to make sure that you have a different URL for each one of those site links. Now, moving along down the list, headline and description, I wouldn't worry about too much because that's just kind of muddled in with the ad creation stuff. So don't worry about those. Callouts, this is essentially the same kind of strategy as site links, just without a link. Callouts, again, I use this for primarily call to action and benefit kind of text. So, could be something, again, kind of going back to free quotes. If you have different certifications, just whatever's relevant for your business, this is where you'd put that kind of stuff in here. I would do at least 4, hit save, and that's pretty much it. And how this asset works is it will show your call out text after your descriptions in the ads. So it's just another way to take up a little bit more text on search so your ads can take up a little bit more space. Another asset that is you can create if you want. I've found in recent years this structured snippet does not really get shown very much, but with the structured snippet, if we go in here, pretty much what it is, it gives you another kind of like a list that you can put on your ad. So you can select your header type here, and let's say you have different styles or types or service catalog. So it's for tree services, for something like this, you can add in handful more. It could just be, tree services, tree removal, stump grinding, like that kind of stuff. Alternatively, you can go in here and just select whatever is relevant for your business and then put in kind of a list here, hit save. And then you can see how it works here. Same kind of thing as the call outs. It's just the service catalog and the different values. But in my experience, these really don't get showed a lot. So don't worry too much about these. I still put them on every single campaign just in case. But these really, for whatever reason nowadays, just kind of don't get shown a ton. And there's other things here that you can mess around with, but those things that I covered are the ones that I primarily create. You can create lead forms if you would like. I don't mess around with this too much. You can potentially get more leads this way. But for me personally, when it comes to Google Ads for a local business, I'm trying to get as many phone calls as possible. And yes, this could get you some more leads, some more form fill leads from Google. But I want to, again, try to get more phone calls over form fills because they're easier to have conversations with, easier to close. And typically I don't do lead forms, but if you did want to have more opportunities to get leads from the ads, people can literally just click a button on the ad itself, pop up a lead form, fill it out, and send it over that way. So if you are open to something like that, you can go through this process and then create a form here and then get leads that way from your ads. Going along down the list here, we have the location asset. Occasionally I use this. It's really something to test and keep an eye on because I've had some instances where I've set up the location asset and it's worked perfectly fine. And pretty much the way you set this up is you need to pretty much connect your Google Ads account to a Google business listing, so a Google Maps listing. And that way you can show your Maps listing as a sponsored listing in Google Maps. And then also on your ad itself, it'll show the location as like a little map pin on your ad. And sometimes these can work. It really depends on the market, depends on the industry. It can get you additional cheaper phone calls. But I've also had campaigns where I enable this location asset and then we get a bunch of clicks on the sponsored maps listing, but they don't actually result in additional phone calls. So that is something that is, I guess, kind of a little bit more in depth, but this is something that you can do if you want to test it out. It's just important that you keep an eye on where your traffic is going to, how many people are actually clicking on that sponsored map listing, and if those people are actually converting into leads. Because I have had campaigns, like I said, where I put the map listing as an asset on a campaign, and then I just see a bunch of essentially wasted clicks with nobody actually placing any phone calls. So it's something to keep an eye on, something to test. But again, like I said, I don't put this on every single campaign. It's really a case-by-case basis based on how I see it performing on a campaign. Other things on here, if you want to include specific pricing, you can use this asset right here to actually create, let's say it's an offer, or you just want to kind of do more price qualification on your ads. You can fill out the information here, add a price, and then put that on your ad as well. I have occasionally messed with this for a lot of the clients that I work with in home services. A lot of the calls to action are around, getting a free quote because it's usually some kind of service-based business where they show up at somebody's house. And in a lot of cases, price is, it's hard to just like put a price on an ad. Obviously, it's industry dependent. So use this if it's relevant to you. It is not totally necessary, but if it is relevant to you, if you have sales or whatever, you can add this in there. Speaking of sales, you can do promotions as well. So same kind of idea as price. You can put in some kind of a promotion, put a price on it, and you use this as another way to kind of expand your ad. And again, something that I personally am not using a ton, but it is something, if it's relevant to you, your business, if you're going to go in and kind of tweak all the promotional details on a regular basis, by all means, obviously you can kind of do that for your campaign. But this is another asset that is a solid option if you are looking to kind of add some pricing to your ads. And then one thing that I personally don't really mess with is app, because a lot of my clients, this is not really relevant to. So if you're doing local lead gen, this is usually not going to be relevant. But it's another option that you can add. And this is, if you're running ads for an app or something like that, you can literally have a way to install the app right there on the ad. So that's pretty much what I would do for the assets. Like I said, the most important ones, definitely the call, site link, image, assuming Google allows your campaign to have images added to it. Call outs are really good as well. And I will put structured snippets on my campaign, but also keep in mind, like, they don't really get seen all that much for whatever reason. And then I'll occasionally test out location based on how it performs. But those are the most important ones. It's a pretty straightforward process, but it's really important that you create these because, like I said, it's going to take up more space on Google. It's going to help you get a better click-through rate. And in the case of the call asset right here, it's going to be very, very crucial for getting additional leads with pretty much little to no effort from your Google Ads. So make sure you get those set up. And once you have those set up, we're pretty much just about done. And there's a few other things that I want to go over before we actually turn the campaign on. They're very little things, but I think they're important to bring up before turning your campaign on. And let's jump into those things right now. All right, so one of the first things I like to do before I turn a campaign on is I like to go over to the devices. So if you go to when and where ads showed, you can go under devices. You can see the different devices that your campaign can show up on. I usually like to exclude tablets. And in order to exclude a device, you would just go to this little pencil icon here under bid adjustment. And then what you want to do is you just want to go to decrease and then type in 100% and hit save. And now tablets is excluded. Now this is part of the optimization process. If computers just isn't converting for you, you can get rid of those. But by default, I usually just get rid of tablets on the campaign. There's usually not a lot of traffic on it. And sometimes it converts, but generally if it's coming from a tablet, it's usually just going to be a form fill in a lot of cases. So usually right off the bat, I disable tablets. Another thing that I like to do on top of that is if we come down here to audiences, keywords, and content, and we go to audiences, I like to exclude the lowest age range on the campaign. So if you go in here, you can do this ad group by ad group if you want. You go in here, hit this little show or hide table thing right here, and you're going to see all the different age ranges on the campaign. In just about every single campaign, I go through and I exclude 18 to 24 for a lot of the clients that I work with. For the most part, people in that age range are either just not going to have the money or they're going to be looking for a job or something like that. So that's generally wasted traffic you can trim out of a lot of campaigns right off the bat. So usually what I do is I just go through here, click on all of these, and then what you want to do, you just come up to edit, and then you just hit exclude from ad group. And if you want to do all this at an ad group by ad group level, pretty much what you would do is once this is done excluding, you could come up here, select the specific ad group that you want to work on, say it's tree removal, and you can get the age ranges for that specific ad group. So this is another optimization lever you can pull. But before I launch the campaign, I like to exclude 18 to 24 because that is usually an age range that is just not going to have the money. In a similar vein as the age range, one thing you can mess with is household income. Sometimes this stuff is not totally 100% accurate. Google is getting a little bit less and less accurate with this over time, but sometimes what I will do is I will come in here and let's see if I can get to the right place here. I will sometimes just exclude lower 50% from the campaign. You don't have to do this, but in my mind, if Google's data is accurate and it is in the lower 50% income range, sometimes that can cause an issue when it comes to, people literally just having the money to pay for the service. This isn't something that I do all the time, but it is something to keep in mind that you could exclude before you get your campaign live, and it's something that I sometimes do depending on the campaign that I'm launching. Another thing you want to do is you want to make sure your auto apply recommendations are turned off. So on this left-hand side here, you should see recommendations up here. You just click on that. And then usually what you have to do to get to the setting here is you have to go to the top, like the view all 15 campaigns of this view. You just have to select the highest level of your account. If you select that, you should see auto apply settings right here. And you want to make sure that none of this is selected. So right now I have 0 of 8, 0 of 14. And if you open these up, you can just kind of double check that none of this is selected. If you have any of this selected, pretty much what that is doing is it's giving Google free reign to make any of these changes automatically on your campaign. And I do not want to have Google doing that, because if they just kind of randomly start changing bid strategies or randomly start adding in keywords or negative keywords or whatever, it can totally mess up the campaign, mess up the optimization process. And you want to make sure all of this is turned off, because it is a massive headache when you go in and you see something's not working and you look at the change history and you see that Google has done a bunch of changes to your account. And while I'm here, now that I mentioned change history, that is one thing. If you did want to go back through changes to see what might have caused an issue, you can go to change history right here, and it will show you all of the changes that have been made on a campaign by date. So you can literally see, this is obviously me building things out on the campaign. If you're doing work on a campaign or somebody else is doing work on a campaign, or you're concerned that Google has auto applied things, you can go through here and then get a log of all the different stuff that's been changed on a campaign. So that is one thing that is highly recommended, is make sure this is all turned off. And if you're not seeing this tab here, previously I've seen a little icon right here that says auto apply settings. So I've seen it different on different accounts. So just look for auto apply on this screen when you have the top level of your kind of campaign selected here, and then go to settings and then turn all that off. And then before things are good to do, I just like to do one last check over the campaign before turning things on, make sure it's all good to go. What you want to do is just go through your ads, go through your ad groups, make sure you have keywords, make sure you have negative keywords in there, so you're kind of filtering out your traffic. Make sure you have ads in every single ad group, and then make sure everything looks good. You have all your assets and that you're good to go. And when you are good to go on the campaign, if you want to turn it on, all you do is just go to the campaign level right here. You got this little selector next to it. Go from pause to enable. When you click enable, it's going to turn on your campaign and Google is going to start getting the ball rolling. And again, if you select something like maximize clicks, might take a couple of seconds, not seconds, it might take a couple of days for you to start getting some traffic. But now that all that is out of the way, there's a few other things that I want to kind of cover, just some high level sort of bonus points, if you will, about what to expect once you have your campaign up and running, a little bit about optimization, because now that all this is done, it's, awesome. It's great that things are done, but this is just where the work is beginning. Optimization is really where the money's made, and you want to make sure that you are staying on top of things as your campaign gets rolling, and that's what we'll cover in the next section. So if you've made it this far, you have your campaign turned on, everything is good to go. What is next? What are the next steps after you get that campaign turned on? Because it isn't just about turning it on and walking away. There is still work that needs to be done. And now ultimately it is time to actually optimize the campaign and get it performing better. You can't just set it and forget it. You still got to put work into it to get it profitable and optimize it and get it working better. I'm not going to go super in depth on that stuff in this video, but if you go to the description below, I've linked over to other support videos that I've created that have to do with campaign optimization and troubleshooting, but I'm going to cover a handful of things at a high level. So what you should expect at the start of the campaign is, if you choose a bid strategy like maximize clicks, it's going to take Google a little bit of time to start figuring itself out. If you go more for something like manual CPC, it will get rolling quicker, but you do have to kind of keep an eye on your bids and make some adjustments there. But if you go with something like maximize clicks, sometimes it takes Google a handful of days to figure itself out. Usually the first 1 to 3 days, you're not going to see a lot of traffic. You might see a handful of impressions, and then slowly but surely you should start seeing traffic come in. And if you're still not seeing traffic after that period of time, either there just isn't enough search traffic for the keywords that you have, or you're just not bidding enough for that traffic. So some things you can do in this case, you can open up the match types or add more keywords. You can open up the location targeting, or you can increase the maximum cost per click bid limit on the maximize clicks bid strategy. Another thing to keep in mind is you are most likely going to get hit with Google recommendations all the time. This is going to come in the form of the optimization score, of notifications on Google. You're probably going to get emails from Google reps, all this kind of stuff. Just don't implement any of it. Some of it is useful. Some of it, like if you have a conflicting negative keyword or something like that. But what's going to happen is Google is going to start hitting you with a bunch of recommendations. It's usually disguised as their optimization score. And don't just start automatically applying these suggestions that they give you, because a lot of them is just in the interest of Google. And like I just mentioned, you're going to get contacted by Google reps. They're going to say similar things. They're going to send you emails saying that you have urgent issues with your campaign, and they're going to make it seem like it's all doom and gloom. But keep in mind, if Google is recommending something, it's probably because it's going to make them more money, because Google is in it for Google at the end of the day. This is something that I tell my clients, and it's something that if you're going to be running your own campaigns, you need to be aware of early on, because you are going to get hit with this a lot when your campaign is running. Another thing we should talk about really quickly is conversion-based bidding. So as your campaign gets moving, and as long as everything is set up properly, you should start to see conversions coming through your campaign. And after you've gotten a good number of conversions, at least 30 or so over the course of a month, you can start thinking about a conversion-based bid strategy. And ultimately, the more conversions you can get, the better. You need a good amount of conversion data before switching over to something like maximize conversions or target cost per action. I have other videos about this on my channel, which I'll probably link down in the description. But when it comes to conversion-based bidding, just keep in mind you need to get conversions through your campaign before you start switching to conversion-based bid strategies. And going back to the Google recommendations, Google's probably going to prompt you pretty early on to switch to a conversion-based bid strategy. Don't do it right away. It's better to gather plenty of conversion data first. And also you want to make sure the parts of your campaigns, like your landing page, your ads, and everything are converting before you just switch over to conversion-based bid strategy. Because if you do that and it's not even converting, you're just going to be most likely paying more per click and then just not really getting anything out the other side. In some cases, you don't even need to switch to a conversion-based bidding strategy. I've had plenty of campaigns that have worked just fine focusing on clicks-based bidding strategies like manual CPC or maximize clicks. There isn't one way to do everything, so it's best to just kind of test and see what works. Now, where the, money is made, you could say, is optimization and troubleshooting. Like I said, you can set up the foundation, launch a campaign. There's still going to be a process that comes along with launching and running and optimizing a campaign. I wish it was as easy as just launching a campaign and walking away. The reality is that more work is going to have to be done, and there's a good chance that some things just aren't going to work and you're going to have to troubleshoot. So like I mentioned, in the description below, I'm going to link to some other videos that I have on my channel that will be useful as kind of like support videos if you are going to run your campaigns yourself. So I have this Google Ads optimization checklist video, kind of going over some things that I do when it comes to optimizing campaigns. This other video here, what to do if your Google Ads campaign isn't generating leads, is sort of a framework that I use to figure out why a campaign might not be working. And it's something that you can take and apply to any campaign to figure out what part in the process just isn't working. Other things in there, which bid strategy you use, that's where I go over kind of maximize clicks versus target CPA and all those other things that you want to kind of consider and when you might even want to not switch to a conversion-based bid strategy. And then the last one here is things that you want to have on your Google Ads landing page. A lot of times with those videos, I don't go into the actual things that you need to do within landing page builders to build a page because everybody's going to be on a different builder, but I go over more foundational things that you need to have on pages to make sure that they are working well. And while in this video, I'm not going to get in the weeds about optimization and different things you can optimize, I just want to do a really quick rundown of optimization so you understand it at a high level. And really optimizing a Google Ads campaign boils down to gathering conversion data, so getting clicks, getting leads, and making adjustments on the campaign based upon what is working and what is not working. So the whole idea is to take budget away from things that don't work and then push that budget towards what does work. So this includes looking at things like keywords, ads, landing pages, audiences, locations, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many different things you can look at, but you want to look at all those different elements of your campaign, look at the data coming in, see what is converting, what is not converting. And for example, if you have keywords that aren't converting, you can literally just trim them from the campaign and more of the budget will get pushed towards keywords that are converting. And you can apply this to pretty much every area of your campaign, whether it's ads, landing pages. Like I said, it's kind of never ending and I didn't want to add it into the video as well because it's a whole other topic in and of itself. But at a high level, optimization is just taking budget away from what isn't working and pushing more of it to what is working. And it's just kind of trimming fat off a campaign. And if you just stack those changes up bit by bit over time, that is the process of optimization. And on top of that, you can use all of that data to troubleshoot your campaign as well. So it's not just about optimizing it and getting it performing better, but it's also about looking at the funnel as a whole, looking at the different parts of it and seeing what parts of it are broken to see how you can fix it. If let's say you do launch it and you're just not getting leads, there's usually a reason you're not getting leads. And that is also part of the process as well. Again, I covered that in the video below, what to do if your Google Ads campaign isn't generating leads. So that is it. If you're actually seeing this slide, I am impressed because not many people are going to make it all the way to the end of this video. So I appreciate you watching. And some final thoughts. If you are the owner of a local business and you've gone through this and you don't want to deal with any of this and you want me to handle all this for you, there's a link in the description below to apply for a consultation. Also, if you want to get access to some of the tools that I recommend, in the description down below, I'm going to link over to that tools page for everything that I use on a regular basis and everything I recommend. And obviously, because we're on YouTube, if you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe for more. And if this content helped you, I'd really appreciate a quick like on this video. It helps a ton with the channel and with getting this video discovered. So anything really helps. And again, I really appreciate you watching the video. If you have any questions, comments, anything, leave them down below. And I hope to see you in some more videos going forward.